any good acting has behavior with it.
Nate, why? Why such bitterness? What have I done to you? Get out! You're no nephew of mine. As far as I'm concerned, you're as dead as that wretch Cermak.
You have to embellish the words with a certain amount of gravity. Because we're talking about things that are really important here that are kind of secret. There's a natural kind of darkness when you talk about noir. You know, it's great. I love it.
When the whole thing started, I thought, they want a statement. Fine. But it'll be my statement.
The Israeli Ministry of Defense has decided to finance the construction of a monument for my fallen soldiers in southern Lebanon. We'll create an oasis of peace, because what is death if not the ultimate peace?
This project, it will require how many trips to Lebanon?
8, 10.
10 trips on death road. You're putting yourself and the company at risk. Lebanon is our Vietnam.
Whatever happens, stay calm.
Let me do it my way. Trust me, for once. Be a monument for all victims of the Lebanon War. A sacred place for both Christians and Muslims.
They force our boys to serve and to die. How can we build this country if they keep destroying it?
You're going into Lebanon? Is it your father? He put you up to this?
Amnon, get out!
I brought this on all of you.
Architecture is not politics.
Everything is politics, even the Holy Scripture is.
I have to defend my vision.
Stop it, damn it! You're just gonna walk away?
Are you for the occupation or against it?
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the perhaps never to be defined existential, Mr. Rogers. That's right, moi, me, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I'm, of course, Rob casting you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. I'm Rob casting Robservations episode 1094. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of episodes. I should speed it up, though, right? I mean, I should give you more. It's been a while since I've done a Robservations. But gosh darn it. You know, I don't like saying I told you so. But I've learned one thing in the entertainment business that I've worked in since 1989. Once again, to tell you for the 487th time, my first professional job was being the art department production assistant on Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, written by a man who'd become a friend of mine, David Scow, who also co-wrote The Crow and wrote a film I produced at Warner Brothers called The Hills Run Red, directed by Mr. Dave Parker, who I've recruited to work on a film we're editing, working on doing some editing on a feature film right now. which I'll tell you about at a later date. But yeah, doing that work. So I've been in the entertainment business for a long time. And you know what's interesting about working in Hollywood, working in the entertainment business? It is like running away to the circus or joining a carnival. There is a certain group of people, and I hate to use the word, I don't like the word artists. I mean, I understand the connotation, but I've always thought that the word artists, to be an artist is an honor that the world at large bestows upon you. Because this is my own personal opinion. To be an artist is to have been recognized as somebody who, through their work, has made a mark on humanity through their work. And I've always believed you're a painter, you're a sculptor, you're a dancer, you're a filmmaker, you're an actor. You part of being an artist, you're an artist. The word artist is sort of an all-encompassing thing, but it also has a judgment in it. The word artist, like if you call yourself like, I'm an artist, well, that means you're also a pompous ass, in my mind. And I mean, I went to a crunchy, chewy granola college for a while before I went to USC. You know what the interesting thing was? I went to the Evergreen State College in Washington State, which, by the way, I loved. I don't love it now. I haven't been there since that student uprising in 2017. It was unrecognizable to the amazing school that I went to in 1985. But what was great about Evergreen, everybody called themselves artists. Yep, I graduated from high school, but now I'm an artist. I'm going to Evergreen to tell everybody to apply my art and to be an artist. Like, I'm like, no. When I got to USC, I went from Evergreen to USC, which was talk about maybe that's why people on one hand call me, I mean, Evergreen was the leftist of the lefty schools. And when I went to USC, it was the exact opposite of that, which is kind of the spectrum I think that I've lived in my whole life. I tell my friend Alvaro all the time that we live in a continuum. For every great thing that's happening, there's always the worst thing that's happening and everything in between. It's all happening. As Jay Baruchel said in Almost Famous, Bowie's here. But anyway, I've always believed that. And so people, I mean, for me, not only do I believe in not calling myself an artist, I would say I'm a filmmaker. I consider myself a classical liberal, or what I also like to call a common sensist. That's my political affiliation. But every single day, I either get called a right-winger or a conservative or a lefty, depending on who happens to be coming at me on Twitter or X or Blue Sky or Threads for whatever it is I happen to be posting. But I'd like to say, I live in a continuum. Some days I'm here, some days I'm here. A lot of the time I'm here or anywhere in between. And that's why I have a very broad-based taste in everything from entertainment. Like, I would not pillory online Timothée Chalamet. I might joke about it, but what he said about opera and ballet, I understood what he was saying, because opera and ballet are not something most people go to. I would ask all of you out there, what was the last opera that you saw performed on stage? I'm willing to bet that a great majority of people out there would say zero. I've never gone to the opera. And I can say for myself, the last time I actually saw an opera on stage was the Seattle Opera performing The Ring of the Nibelung. I didn't go to all of them. I went to Götterdämmerung, and I wanted to do that because I was interested in Wagner. I'd read about Wagner. I'd heard Wagner, I'd listened to all the CDs because of the music. Why did I get interested? Probably because of Excalibur. But the Seattle Opera used to do the Ring Cycle a lot, and they did a sci-fi version of, and I liked it. I mean, it's not in English. I think opera is really interesting. And when I saw Amadeus, I got really interested in Mozart's operas. And I like opera. I used to get operas, believe it or not, on Laserdisc and watch them, and because the music was great and the stories were great too. Ballet. I can tell you the first ballet I ever saw was Coppelia. My grandmother took me to see Coppelia, and she sold it to me. I went and saw it because she goes, it's about a robot. Like, all right, Grandma. But I like ballet. Elizabeth and I have gone to ballet. I like dance. But you have to admit, ballet and opera, which were once the popular entertainments, have sort of been supplanted. As I've always said, that movies, of course, became the art form of the 20th century. They were more of the populist art form, and it became very expensive to go to the opera and the ballet. So, but when Timothée Chalamet made that comment, and he was actually making, I thought, a very relevant comment about he didn't want to be involved in things that were dying or whatever, I got what he meant, and yet, of course, immediately everybody jumps on him. But what he was saying, I totally understood. Now, I don't think Timothée Chalamet would ever not take the opportunity if someone said to him, listen, Timothée, I have tickets to the ballet, or I've got tickets to the opera. You want to go? I think he would go. I do. But back to my own beliefs, as a classical liberal, just to lay it on the line, what is a classical liberal? Classical liberal, basically, and a classical liberal emerged 17th, 1800s, really that's when the idea of it came about. Very simple. Individualism and liberty. Individuals are viewed as the best judges of their own interests, prioritizing the individual over the collective. Always. Limited government. Government's role should be restricted to protecting property rights, enforcing contracts, and defending against harm. Free market, laissez-faire, minimal government economics. Minimal government intervention in the economy, promoting free trade and competition. Rule of law and natural rights. Adherence to fundamental inalienable rights such as life, liberty, and property. And free expression. Strong support for free speech and mutual toleration. As many people know, if you've watched this channel, I like people. I like human beings of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds. I do not care what color you are. I do not care what religion you practice. I do not care what your sexuality is. All that matters to me is that we all want to belong to the human collective, and I believe that we all need to be able to live and let live. The problem that I have is when you want to impose your belief system or your way of life on others. Now, I combine that with being a common sensist. I think human civilization works best when we're all together. We are a collective bunch. We like to be around other people. We like to live in a civilization that works, but we also want to retain our individuality. I don't think that's really too difficult to get. That's kind of what I believe. And growing up as somebody who was surrounded by either people that love the arts or worked within the arts, and I say that we all know what the arts are, not artists, it's different. But the arts have always attracted people who are individualists because they like the fact that what do the arts do? The arts explore what it means to be a human being in all of our crazy ways of being. And a lot of people that work in the arts or are attracted to the arts are not exactly what you would call middle-of-the-road people. They tend to live on the fringes. So there's a lot of very unique individuals. And for me, from a very young age, I had lots of friends they were all a little bit crazy. I also had a lot of friends that were LGBTQ. Actually, just LGB. Not so much Q or T. But I met a few back in the day. But it was, people that have that were marginalized, but also had sexualities that were out of the norm. And the funny thing is the more you're interested in your sexuality, I also think that kind of goes hand in hand with being interested in the arts. Because sexuality, as opposed to just using sex for reproduction, sexuality itself is expression. It is behavior, and it can be very artistic. Because sexuality, as opposed to the act of procreation, sexuality fuels artistic endeavor. All those things, the fact that you see the human form as beautiful. You see the act of coming together with another person, turning somebody on, having them turn you on. All of that is part of the creative impulse. What is erotic is inherently, I think, creative, or it sparks creativity. So I've never shied away from all kinds of sexualities in my life. It's interesting. It's also the beginning of art. And it's also a celebration of being alive because, you know, you can't fuck when you're dead. So there's that. Why do I bring all of this up? Well, it comes down to two diametrically opposed things that I want to talk about, which is, of course, science fiction TV shows. And I think what's really interesting is one of the shows. I mean, you've seen the thumbnail. I'm talking about For All Mankind and Starfleet Academy. And what I find very interesting about both of these programs is Star Trek has turned into something that it wasn't. And For All Mankind became what Star Trek used to be, which isn't surprising considering one of the people who created For All Mankind got his start writing Star Trek in the third season. And I'm of course talking about Ron Moore, who also went on to co-create with David Icke Battlestar Galactica. And Ron Moore became one of the prime movers, one of the great writers to come out of. He cut his teeth in the third season of Next Generation writing The Bonding, and went on to, in that same season, writing Sins of the Father and defining the modern Klingon Empire for audiences in the third season of Next Gen. So anyway, we have the story of two shows this week, and I wanted to get into it. Obviously, we found out that Starfleet Academy has been canceled. Now, they already shot season 2, so we're going to get season 2 eventually. Whatever. No one watched Starfleet Academy anyway, but a small audience, I guess. And then we have, of course, the 5th season of For All Mankind debuts Friday. It was renewed for a 6th season, 6th and final season. And also, when the 10 episodes of For All Mankind finish airing in May, its spin-off series, Star City, which is going to tell the story from the Russian point of view, debuts. So it's win-win for all of us For All Mankind fans. And once again, it's 9 years of losing for Star Trek fans. Actually, I would go back and say we've been losing since 2009, but we'll get to that. Anyway, I wanted to start by reading a couple of articles, as you might know, to set the stage for the discussion. And I have the articles here. And let me just read what Variety, this article that was in Variety today. For All Mankind to end with Season 6 at Apple TV, creators explain why and what to expect. This is written by Michael Schneider and Hunter Ingram. Hi, Bob. And if you've watched For All Mankind, you know what that is. And if you're a Bob Newhart fan, you should know what that is too. Hi, Bob. In advance of its long-awaited Season 5 return, Apple TV's For All Mankind has been renewed for a 6th and final season. The news also comes in advance of the premiere of the spin-off series Star City, which takes a look at the alternative space race line from the Soviet perspective and premieres a storyline on May 29th. News means For All Mankind will be able to complete its expansive storyline as originally envisioned by creators Ronald D. Moore, Matt Wolpert, and Ben Nadivi, a rarity in the often quick cancel culture of TV. For All Mankind launched on November 1st, 2019, the same day as Apple TV's The Morning Show, making both series the streamer's longest-running series. Getting to explore the For All Mankind universe over 6 seasons has been an amazing privilege, and we're thrilled to have the opportunity to finish the story the way we've always hoped, said Wolpert and Nadivi in a joint statement. We're incredibly proud of what the series has become and grateful to Apple TV and Sony Pictures Television for helping us see it through to its final chapter. For All Mankind has earned rave reviews and awards recognition for its unique storytelling, unfurling an alternate history of the U.S., the space race, and even the globe, as it ponders how life might have been different had the Soviet Union made it to the moon first. Perhaps the Cold War would have forced the U.S. to double down, spending more money and resources to then build a moon base first. Along the way, the Soviets and the Americans would try to outdo each other, leading to earlier advances in technology and perhaps quicker social change, like the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. From being one of the first Apple originals to launch on Apple TV in 2019, For All Mankind has remained an innovative, epic sci-fi series that has enthralled fans season after season. Apple TV programming head Matt Chernis said in a statement, "As one of Apple TV's most enduring and celebrated series, it has delivered time and again because of the extraordinary artistry of visionary storytellers Ron, Matt, and Ben, along with our partners at Sony, and we can't wait for people to experience how this story comes to its exhilarating conclusion when the final season debuts next year." Season 5 returns with weekly episodic drops starting Friday, March 29th through Friday, May 29th. The same day Star City premieres. The show has now made it to the 2010s. Actually, the new season takes place in 2012. And in this timeline, Mars is teeming with humans. Here's the description for this season. The generation-spanning series picks up in the 2010s, years since the Goldilocks asteroid heist. Happy Valley has grown into a thriving colony with thousands of residents and a base for new missions that will take us even further into the solar system. But with the nations of Earth now demanding law and order on the red planet, friction continues to build between the people who live on Mars and their former home. Wolpert told Variety that the final season will allow the producers to bring the show up to the present day, or rather what the 2020s would look like in the For All Mankind world. "I think from the beginning, the thing that we were focused on, and we didn't know quite how many seasons it would take to get there, was that we wanted to reach the present day," he said. "We wanted to tell the arc of the story from the initial divergence of 1969 and then reach the present moment and see how different the world we're in now could have been had we kept pushing for progress and kept pushing forward as a species." Nadivi added that their plans for season 6 and the series ending is remarkably close to what they'd originally set out to do with Ron Moore. "Honestly, what's incredible is how close we're still to the roadmap we laid out with Ron really early on," he said. "It's one thing to get this far, it's another thing to say that the early roadmap is still our roadmap, which is not to say we haven't diverged and gone away from certain things and lost people, but we're still on that map. And it's been an incredible journey to think the ending's going to be something else." Wow. Imagine that. Imagine showrunners having a map for their entire series, no matter how long it was going to go. They knew what they wanted to do. And you know what? When you're dealing with science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and you're doing serialized programming, you better fucking know well what you're going to do, because audiences expect that now. No more bullshit like making a Lost pilot and not knowing what the fuck you're going to do. And when you get to the end of Lost, it's one of the greatest audience betrayals in television history. You know what I'm saying? Or a show like Starfleet Academy that couldn't even tell you what the curriculum of Starfleet Academy was. And you'd think that from the very beginning that you'd figure that out. These people in For All Mankind did. And one of the interesting things about this show is they didn't have to do this. But in For All Mankind, I'm sure they made all this stuff to be used in the show, but whether it was edited for time or not, you can go to the Apple website, go to their For All Mankind site, and you can see video packages that are in-universe interstitials from like news shows giving you background on the show. Which, by the way, those little interstitials and world building have won awards. Pretty amazing. Back for season 5 are cast members Joel Kinnaman, Toby Kibble, Edie Gathegi, Cynthia Wu, Coral Pena, Aleda, she's amazing. And Ren Schmidt. My God, do I love Ren Schmidt. You can watch her in Nuremberg. Free Margot, Justice for Sergei. While new regulars, Marielle Enos, Costas Ronan, Sean Kaufman, Ruby Cruz, and Inez Asserson, they're great too. For All Mankind has won Emmys for interactive programming and emerging media, as well as the PGA Innovation Award. It's also been nominated for a TCA, Critics' Choice, Hugo, Saturn, Art Directors Guild, Set Directors Society of America, and other awards. Wolpert and Nadivi are showrunners and executive produce, with Ron Moore and Meryl Davis of Tall Ship Productions, as well as Kira Snyder, David Weddle, Bradley Thompson, who are great, by the way. More Star Trek veterans coming on to write this show, and they're terrific. And Seth Edelstein, Sony Pictures Television, produces the series. Now, I have seen, thank you to review copies from a couple of months ago, I have seen the first 8 episodes of season 5. I don't think it's, I am not telling tales out of school to say I love this show. I was late to this show. I didn't watch the first season, kind of like the X-Files. I was like, which is funny because I'll watch anything in space. You tell me you're going to go to space, I'll watch it. And one of my favorite movies of all time is absolutely Philip Kaufman's 1983, The Right Stuff. Come on, Criterion. Where's that fucking 4K with, you know, the Dolby Atmos? Let's get with the program. Anyway, I love space. And when I sat down and started watching, people said, oh, Rob, you're going to like this show. When I sat down and watched it, I am a child of this space program. I was 2 in 1969. But, of course, the astronauts, I used to know by 1972 all the names of the astronauts that landed on the moon. I knew the Skylab astronauts. And living through that part of the space program, unfortunately, going to the moon was, let's face it, we had to beat the Russians. It was a political act. I had no illusions about that. But what was interesting was, of course, everyone says, well, you know, what was the point of the space program? Well, anyone that could tell you was there were so many technological advances made doing space research that who knows what would have happened if we kept with it. And the interesting thing about we beat the Soviets to the moon, and landing on the moon was the great prize, at least for our national consciousness. And once we had that, there was no other prize that we were going to get to. We won the moon. Unfortunately, you know, the powers that prevail, I understand we have pressing problems on Earth and all that, but this show by America, so this is an alternate history show, and alternate histories are a big deal in science fiction literature. You know, we saw The Man in the High Castle, obviously, was a very interesting show. The Handmaid's Tale. Alternate histories of America, alternate histories of Earth are always popular. What if stories. This is the great what if story. What if the Soviet Union beat the United States to the moon? What would that have done to our national consciousness? And what is so interesting is to watch the fact that competition, because it wasn't now just landing on the moon, it was we were going to build a base on the moon, and we were going to and having that constant give and take. And what was really interesting, the show posits it makes some really interesting suppositions that NASA was granted the right to patent all of whatever its research wrought. NASA could patent that research and fund itself through making those patents available in the grand scheme of things, which was a really interesting idea. So NASA was no longer beholden to government finance. It financed itself. And so the technology in For All Mankind is about 10 years ahead of our technology here in the real world. And you see that robotics and automation and what is going to happen. And we're seeing that it's amazing that Elon Musk made his recent announcement about his chip factory right before we're going to see season 5 debut, because obviously there's an Elon Musk, Eddie Theggy plays a character that's very similar to Elon Musk on the show. And it's a very compelling show. But now here's the thing. It is not science fiction swashbuckling Star Wars. A lot of people say, well, Rob, it's like science fiction meets a soap opera. And I'm like, look, it's about real people. It's about what would normal, real people do that happen to work for NASA or the aerospace industry and work for government. And it counterpoints our history. And what it does is, like any great action-adventure science fiction show, it's allegorical. In its presentation of an alternate history, it's allegorically addressing issues that are pertinent to us today through the lens of a science fiction alternate history context, which is what, another show named Star Trek used to do really well. And a lot of people have said to me, well, Rob, For All Mankind is woke. It's so woke. Well, here's the difference. There's nothing wrong with being woke. There's nothing wrong with addressing progressive values. And as a classical liberal, and as somebody who grew up around people that were artistically inclined, I've met all kinds of people on the fringes that have alternate points of view. And that's kind of where I live. And what's interesting about For All Mankind is it presents these things, especially For All Mankind has probably some of the best LGBT representation on television, maybe ever. But it presents it as matter of fact. And it counterpoints it with things that happen in real history. So it's not going out there, putting it on the forefront and going, this, you have to believe in this. It's presenting it matter-of-factly. You can take it the way you want to take it. But it's done in a very intelligent way. It's done in a respectful way. And it's not thrusting it upon you. It's asking you to look at these issues in the context of politics, of American life, of what history might have said. It's brilliantly done. And also, there's a lot of what people would call soap opera aspects to the show. And admittedly, it was very guilty in the third season of going full-on soap opera. Now, I still love the third season, but there are certain choices that were made, and I don't want to spoil them for you, that even I will admit, you guys pushed it. They brought it back, and I thought season 3 had great moments. I will say the last episode of season 2 is one of the most exciting hours of television in the 21st century. But it is a fantastic show that is first and foremost about people, about human beings, about families, about legacy, about generations, about heroism. It's about all the great things that we love science fiction television for. And more often than not, there's been many times when I've gone to the computer, they've done a brilliant job at really playing with history in really interesting ways. And again, like Sinners, which made me go to my computer and look up, did Chinese people really live in like the Mississippi Delta back in that day? Found out, sure enough, they did. The great thing about For All Mankind is not only does it own its own website, not only have they made things presenting what the real history was, counterpointing it with the history on the show, but they've given us so many great characters that you care about. Ed Baldwin, for instance, one of my favorite characters in science fiction television ever. And if you like Ed Baldwin, and if you followed his journey, I will tell you, one of my favorite things in any TV show I have ever seen, but again, you have to love For All Mankind, is episode 3 of season 5 of For All Mankind. The episode's called Home. And I'm just saying, as I'm thinking about the show, what they did in the end of this show, it's and watch the credits. As a matter of fact, I really hope Apple TV. I would beg you, Apple TV, please, if somebody at Apple is watching this, or make a phone call if you know somebody, make sure that at the end of episode 3 that you don't reduce the credits into a little box and say, do you want to see the next episode? I know the show's probably already been encoded, but please, everybody, please, Apple, I beg you, Sony, I beg you, do not reduce the screen over the end credits of episode 3 of For All Mankind season 5 Home. Don't do it. Let it stay up. Let it play. Because it now you have to know what you're looking at. A lot of people remember, I loved it so much, and it's one of the reasons I love this show. And you'll see why, and especially if you know anything about the American space program. And if you love For All Mankind, the thought put into episode 3, especially the end of episode 3, is incredibly rewarding. Kudos to the producers of the show, to Ben, to Ron. I mean, I'm just, Joel, you're the man. Anyway, love that show so much. And to me, it's what great science fiction does. And I implore you all to sit down and look, it can be a slow burn. It's very rewarding. By the time you get to the end of season 1, and especially by the time you get to season 2, you will be locked in. And now you're going to get another 10 episodes. There'll be 50. There'll be 60 episodes For All Mankind. And I think it takes its place in the pantheon of top science fiction shows of all time, depending on what your taste is. And I cannot love this show more than I do. So, yeah. 200 Watt Studio sends in a super chat and says, pour one out for our absent friend, Starfleet Academy. No, let's not do that. Let's not. I think Starfleet Academy, it just showed you how modern Star Trek, certainly beginning in 2009 and hopefully ending. I mean, if they announce Star Trek Year One, that is fucking a dead corpse. That's necrophilia at this point, as far as I'm concerned. Don't do it. Don't do Star Trek Year One. Don't let those fraudulent creators, don't let them go besmirch the memory of the original series any more than they already have. Do not let them. But anyway, that's just me. Please don't. But anyway, let's talk about Starfleet Academy, and which got canceled. Now, again, they've already shot the second season. Starfleet Academy, which could be, in my mind, one of the most disappointing allegorical science fiction action adventure shows ever made. First and foremost, because I was really looking forward to actually seeing a show about Starfleet Academy. What would a Starfleet Academy experience actually be like? And if you think about it, beginning in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1, we got a little taste of what Starfleet Academy might be like in an episode called Coming of Age. And you know what, people, it's funny, reading all this reactionary or this history. Was Star Trek The Next Generation's first two seasons great? No. They were incredibly uneven, though. And the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation did, in fact, have some wonderful episodes. Now, people forget The Big Goodbye, which is one of the establishing holodeck episodes of the series, won a Peabody Award for excellence in broadcasting. Other episodes from the first season of Star Trek The Next Generation I think are worth seeing. Heart of Glory, the first major Klingon episode, fucking great. Vaughn Armstrong being seen as a Klingon there who later played a role in Star Trek history all the way through Enterprise. Another great episode. The Arsenal of Freedom, not a great episode, but one I kind of like. 11001001, both a great use of the holodeck and a very interesting alien race. Coming of Age, another great story. Now, do we have awful episodes like Angel One and Home Soil, and of course the much hated Code of Honor, even though that was about a matriarchal civilization? Sure. Not the greatest episodes in the world, but there are other mid-level episodes. Symbiosis, Haven. I mean, these are not great, but the show was trying to be Star Trek in the 60s. They hadn't figured it all out yet. But there are joys to be had. I do like Encounter at Farpoint, even though it's stilted. There's still a lot of really interesting performances, and there's really interesting things. And one of the interesting things when people talk about pushback from the original Next Generation was people just didn't like change. They didn't like the fact that the hatred, the vitriol that was being leveled at the show, especially from the fan community, was like they wanted Kirk, Spock, and McCoy to come back, especially because we'd just seen Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. So why not do Star Trek? And we'd seen 4 Star Trek movies, bring the cast back and put them on TV. So it wasn't like people said, well, it wouldn't have survived. Yeah, Star Trek The Next Generation was a hit from the get-go. It revolutionized television in first-run syndication. First-run syndication was usually talk shows and daytime game shows and things like that. Star Trek The Next Generation was really the first big, expensive stab into trying to do first-run syndication for a first-run drama. It revolutionized television. Star Trek The Next Generation, the second season, unfortunately, was subject to the writer's strike. They had to delve into scripts that were made for Star Trek Phase 2, and they had to make The Child for the second season. And it was hamstrung. But the second season, Rob Bowman directing things like Elementary Dear Data and also episodes like Q Who. Again, Dr. Pulaski replaced Dr. Crusher. A lot of good stuff happened in the second season. But again, it wasn't really until third season that Next Generation took off. But remember, they did 22 episodes in the second season of TNG, and they did 26 episodes in the first season. Starfleet Academy did 10 episodes, and can you remember any of the episode titles or anything that happened? People remember, oh, there was a Deep Space Nine episode. So that's what you're gonna hold up as a great episode, a show that, once again, the only things that people ever remember about modern Star Trek are when they talk about Star Trek that came before. Lower Decks, people love Lower Decks because it was all about previous Star Trek. The whole show for 5 seasons. Let's talk about, it's a show that we're all Star Trek fans and we can all check ourselves against the main characters. Anyway, I won't get into that, but I think that the reason Starfleet Academy was a terrible, terrible show was everything about modern Star Trek was front and center. But really, it failed as an allegorical action-adventure Star Trek show. It would have been really interesting to delve into what would Starfleet Academy be like. And as I've said, there were 3 episodes in Next Generation that pointed the way. There was Coming of Age in the first season. There was The First Duty, where you actually see Starfleet Academy and you experience it through the characters. Picard has to go back there. And then, of course, there was Lower Decks, when you see recent cadets on the Enterprise. Then, of course, Deep Space Nine delved into Starfleet Academy. Nog went to Starfleet Academy. You got to see things like Red Squad. And all of that was dismissed. There was nothing that was set up and the answer going, well, it's the 32nd century. Star Trek Starfleet Academy was, by Alex Kurtzman's own admission, they just liked to deal with whatever their messaging was. There's this really odd thought now that Star Trek was a show that led with its message. I don't know where that came from. And like Kirk's few speeches or Picard's speech, I mean, when you misquote Picard's famous speech from the drumhead in your episode, you fucking failed, dude. I'm sorry. Who let that go? When you look at something like that, you're like, I can't take you seriously. I didn't ask you to quote the drumhead. I didn't. But when you misquote it in your own episode, I'm like, did you do... This is why I hate modern Star Trek. They haven't done the work, man. They haven't done the work. There's a million reference books. There's encyclopedias. There's the space flight chronology. There's the chronology that Mike and Denise made. There's so much material, and to watch them completely fail, and they don't understand the different distances in space, and when they're like, the Klingon homeworld was destroyed. Like, there's only one Klingon world. This weird idea that there's only one, because they think that there's only one Earth, which there is, but it's not like the Klingon Empire was made up of one planet. There was no thought or understanding of the universe itself, or like no one extrapolated. First of all, you know what I would like to have known with Starfleet Academy? What's your curriculum? I'm going to read some stuff. Well, we have this idea. It's going to be 4. Look, you didn't have any idea. You know what the writing staff should have done? You should have started out and said, okay, in Starfleet Academy, here's the different things that we're going to cover, where you're going to learn in Starfleet Academy. But they made this really stupid idea that the ship is the school. Because they're like, we want to do a Starfleet Academy show, but we also have to have a spaceship with a captain and the this and the that. That's a fail. And listening to Alex Kurtzman talk about, well, it's going to be X-Men First Class meets Harry Potter. What? How about Coming of Age, First Duty, and Lower Decks? How about looking at the Starfleet Academy episodes? How about the entire book series of Starfleet Academy that was written in the 90s? How about the Marvel Comics? You already had your show right there. You stole from a lot of other people. Ursula K. Le Guin for Strange New Worlds. Why not steal from all this existing Star Trek material? Oh, that would require you to actually have to go watch Star Trek and read Star Trek stuff, which clearly they don't do. And Kirsten Beyer being marginalized, they probably like, yeah, we'll tolerate you. But anyway, I won't get into whatever. And of course, we have to spend time with our relationships, our interpersonal relationships. We got to get into our romances, and we got to make sure that everybody, let's put forward, look at the LGB stories in For All Mankind and compare and contrast those with modern Star Trek. Modern Star Trek, you're at elementary school, at junior high level at best. And For All Mankind does it for the adults. So, but anyway, I want to read a few articles about this. First, I want to read an article from Screen Rant, because of course I have to read an article from Screen Rant. Here is the article. I love the title. How can I not? Why Star Trek Starfleet Academy ending in season 2 is a tragedy. Aww. And this is by John Arquinola. Arquinola? And he's the new and classic TV editor, senior writer, and interviewer with a special focus on Star Trek. He has over 5,000 published articles on Screen Rant, and he has interviewed the biggest names in Star Trek on the red carpet and VIP events. Well, I would like to say that I've interviewed some of the biggest names involved with the making of Star Trek for 3 years, and you can watch all my documentary material on both the Next Generation and Enterprise Blu-rays. We did hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, along with Roger Lay Jr., overseen by the Akutas. So anyway, Star Trek Starfleet Academy ending with Season 2 is a tragedy, with ramifications beyond the end of just another Star Trek series. Created by Gaia Violo, and executive produced by co-showrunners Alex Kurtzman and Noga Landau, Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 1's finale premiered on Paramount Plus on March 12th, while the filming of Season 2 wrapped in Toronto in late February. Variety reported that Paramount Plus opted to end Star Trek Starfleet Academy with Season 2 as the final season. The young adult skewing Star Trek series was divisive online, but Variety gives a particular reason for Paramount Plus pulling the plug on Starfleet Academy. The show failed to find a significant audience across its 10-episode first season. It has failed to rank on the Nielsen Top 10 streaming viewership charts. Well, let's leave it at that. It failed because it had no audience. Period. That's why. Why? Because this idea is they're going to find this audience. There's some mythical new audience because the Star Trek audience is dying off. Now, I would say that's true of the original series audience, but Star Trek has audiences of all generations. And people love Star Trek when it's Star Trek. This show, according to Alex Kurtzman, was X-Men First Class meets Harry Potter. So it wasn't Star Trek. You weren't interested in that. You were interested in chasing a new audience. And as you've said at any time anyone asked you, you wanted to rely on the message of Star Trek. And what exactly is that? Talk about, it's all about diversity and inclusion. Yeah, but that would be self-evident in the future. A human future is now a multi-species future throughout the galaxy. So focusing on these issues, your progressive issues of today in the 32nd century, is by itself a fraudulent way to make a show. You, as any good science fiction writer would tell you, you need to extrapolate what would human civilization look like in the 32nd century? What would a human civilization look like that already had interacted and indeed intermarried and indeed been with all kinds of alien races for 1,000 years? There is not one shred of imagination that we have ever seen since Discovery went into the future that would say that any of these writers had any inkling of trying to show us this. All they cared about was putting themselves on screen today. What are we going to think about today? Let's not make a credible show about what the best of the best would be in the 32nd century. Let's make a show about a bunch of mediocre people. Look, I swallowed my comm badge. I'm out. If that's the people Starfleet Academy is letting in, we're all lost. You don't deserve to be on the final frontier. But anyway, Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and Star Trek Strange New Worlds all charted in Nielsen's streaming top 10, which is evidently a crucial metric that Star Trek Starfleet Academy failed to reach. Which tells you something. They're going for an audience that didn't show up. Why didn't the young audience show up? Because they're not watching shows like this. Who are they watching? Each other and themselves on social media. They're not looking for shows like this. And I'll tell you something. If you think about what is Gen Z likes science fiction. If you ask many of Gen Z, and I know this because I see it all across social media, what's one of their favorite movies? Interstellar. Interstellar is a movie that they talk about. I would say Interstellar, while imperfect in my mind, has a lot more Star Trek than anything that we've seen from Kurtzman since 2017, including a respect to science, an understanding of space, which modern Star Trek has none of. It's really, quite frankly, horrifying. But how scientifically illiterate the show really is, which, it's a show that's a Frankenstein hybrid of everything that isn't Star Trek, which is so funny because if you're going to look at something, don't look at X-Men First Class and don't look at Harry Potter to do a Star Trek show. Look at Interstellar. Go there. Watch that. Or now Project Hail Mary or The Martian. I mean, if you use The Martian and you used, hell, in the end of The Martian, you see Matt Damon addressing a classroom of astronaut cadets. There is more that you will learn about making a Starfleet Academy show in the last scene of The Martian than in all 10 episodes of this swill. But do they do that? No. It's unbelievable to me. And why they get $10 million an episode. Remember, Star Trek The Next Generation, I think, was $1.4 million an episode. And they did 178 of them. Because they knew what they were doing. Anyway. Yet beyond streaming numbers, budgets, and other factors that led to Paramount Plus photon torpedoing the series at its intended halfway point, the demise of Starfleet Academy is a profound loss for Star Trek. No, it's not. It's not a profound loss for Star Trek. The idiocy of this show was insulting. It was insulting on so many levels. It was insulting on a scientific level. It was insulting on a human level. It was insulting on a Star Trek level. It was insulting on any kind of higher educational institution learning level. It was a show about a bunch of mediocre people who had mediocre understandings of themselves that were in a mediocre teaching environment that was going to get them all killed. There was nothing about this show that was excellent. It didn't deal with meritocracy. It wasn't interested in doing the hard work. It was interested in marginalizing every single human being and every single thing that showed up on it. It was more interested in talking about people's personal lives than it was about talking about what it would mean to be a Starfleet cadet in the 32nd century. I hated this show. I hated the show because of the wasted potential. And you know what? It didn't work. And the people that watched this show, there's people that liked it. I understand. They did. But it's because everybody saw themselves in it. I could be in Starfleet Academy too. Every kid gets a trophy after all. Star Trek Starfleet Academy, ending with Season 2, cuts the series off at its halfway point. Co-showrunners Alex Kurtzman and Noga Landau designed Star Trek Starfleet Academy to reflect a 4-year college experience. Really? Because college students would choke on their comm badges. Fuck you. Give me a break. College experience. How about focus it around what would it be like to go to Starfleet Academy? You saw versions of it. There's plenty of material you could have delved into, but you didn't. I swallowed my comm badge. Somebody actually wrote that and they shot that scene. Come on. Not being able to see Caleb Meir, Jaden Cragg, Genesis Lythe, Tarima Sadal, Darim Reme. Look at these characters. Series Acclamation Mill and Occam Sandal. I never even knew these people's names, and to try and read them, it's like, how about, I don't know, graduate and embark on their Starfleet careers is a bitter pill to swallow. Worse, Noga Landau has hinted that Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 2 ends on a cliffhanger. Who cares? And by the way, why should it end on a cliffhanger? The first Star Trek cliffhanger, Captain Picard had become Locutus of Borg, and it looked like the Enterprise was going to get destroyed or Picard was going to die. That's a cliffhanger. Why is there a cliffhanger in a show about academia? And by the way, you know what? If I had wanted to make a Star Trek Starfleet Academy show, I would have told my writers to look at something like, as I've said, say it with me now, Friday Night Lights. It only took place in high school, but the characters in Friday Night Lights are way more mature than the characters in this show were. Friday Night Lights and The West Wing are Star Trek shows. They aren't Star Trek shows, but they are. If you wanted to point to something, I would look at The West Wing. The West Wing is a great science fiction show. Look at The West Wing and look at Friday Night Lights. Those are the shows that you should look at when you're thinking about Star Trek. Not X-Men, which is fantasy, or Harry Potter, which is fantasy. Star Trek, West Wing, Friday Night Lights. That's what you should look at. Anyway, and there's a cliffhanger. I mean, the fact that Starfleet Academy had a big bad that had nothing to do with academia, that eventually became like the most powerful villain in the universe after being a Harry Mudd type. That's also, what's with the hybridization? I'm half Tellarite, half Klingon. I'm half Jem'Hadar, half Klingon, even though that made no sense. Anyway, I did that again. You know when I do that. I hate when I do that. But anyway, these characters. So we're not going to see season 2. Star Trek gave up trying to connect to younger audiences. Paramount ending Star Trek Starfleet Academy after only 2 seasons sends a greater message about giving up on trying to attract a younger audience. I was a Star Trek fan when I was 5. Star Trek always attracted a younger audience. Always. To try and pander to a younger audience is silly because your pandering is obvious. A young audience doesn't want to watch this. You're not going to attract people to come watch this, a Star Trek show, by making it not Star Trek. I mean, Paramount Plus were designed with the specific mission of creating new young Star Trek fans. Star Trek Prodigy and Star Trek Starfleet Academy, and both shows only lasted 2 seasons, despite critical acclaim and their evident high quality. Yeah, you know why? I mean, Prodigy was actually pretty good, but they're really not Star Trek. Granted, Star Trek Starfleet Academy is being treated better than Star Trek Prodigy, which was unceremoniously canceled, purged from Paramount Plus, and found a brief reprieve on Netflix before being relegated to streaming limbo. Signs point to Paramount Plus premiering Star Trek Starfleet Academy Season 2 in 2027, with the expected bells and whistles as its final season. It's no secret that Star Trek fandom is aging. While Star Trek has been traditionally passed down through generations from grandparents and parents to their children, Star Trek remains in danger of not attracting enough younger fans to sustain it into the future. The only reason that Star Trek has not been sustaining new fans or making new fans is because it's not good. It is not well written and it's not good. It's as simple as that. I mean, you're watching shows. Look at any show that is great that's on television. There are plenty of shows that are attracting all different kinds of audiences. You know what? You know what was a good Star Trek show? The Night of the Seven fucking Kingdoms. You could have done that. I mean, the people that are making Star Trek are fucking infants. They don't know. I don't understand what they're pointing at. Harry Potter and X-Men First Class. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? I mean, what do these people hang out in coffee shops? Christ. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's if you wrote fucking Interstellar and made that the show, and I'm not saying copy Interstellar, but why not? You copy everything else. Why not write a show? Why not look at the shows that are successful? You know, Harry Potter doesn't count. That's a fantasy. And that show, of course, I guess that's your audience, kids. You know, it's junior high and high school, magic. And of course, Star Trek has turned into that. Starfleet's detractors win. Star Trek Starfleet Academy's cancellation gives its detractors Ursaz victory, while Star Trek Starfleet Academy earned critical acclaim and an impressive 87% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Its meager 51% audience score is questionable because of a bad faith effort to review bomb Starfleet Academy. You know what? It's not bad faith because we've had mediocre Star Trek for 9 fucking years. Why? Because these new progressive showrunners, it's the same thing. They, by definition, Alex Kurtzman said, we want to use this show for messaging. Who gave you a platform to think that you have messaging to bring to us? No one with your haircut and with your glasses and the clothes you wear. Who do you want to message? Other people in the coffee shop? You know, other people that shop at Erewhon? Enough of the bullshit, man. What people want is great storytelling. They want great characters and great storytelling. They want an allegorical action-adventure science fiction television show. They want The Expanse. They want Battlestar Galactica. Hell, they want fucking Lex more than they want the swill that you've been serving up for 9 years, spending ungodly sums of money. Christ, you can go back and watch animated episodes of Thundar the Barbarian and get better science fiction than you got in Star Trek Discovery. That's what people want, man. That's what people want. And when you can counterpoint your Star Trek swill with these other shows, I mean, Christ, I watch Paradise, which is as it goes along, turning into a wild science fiction show. Paradise, which I would call an airport read put on TV, is fucking great. Paradise is 10 times the show that Starfleet Academy is. As a matter of fact, I would say that Star Trek Paradise resembles a Star Trek show way more than Star Trek Starfleet Academy resembles a Star Trek show. And they have nothing to do with one another. But there you go. There's so many more modern shows, modern science fiction shows. Germany's Dark. I mean, how many shows do we have to list? There's so many shows that are better than modern Star Trek shows, and that's Star Trek should be the Tiffany standard. But I haven't ranted about this, so you've heard me say this a million times. Outlets like Giant Frickin' Robot and many YouTubers are purposefully hate farming Star Trek Starfleet Academy for profit. Hey, why not? And the YA Star Trek series and its actors have been targeted by virulent, anti-woke, sexist, and homophobic harassment online. Paramount Plus gave Starfleet Academy's haters fuel that their efforts worked and will work again in the future. Look, you know what? If you give people great shows that are really well written, then people will like them. But when you're leading, when you take a Klingon and you decide, okay, we're gonna flip the script on a Klingon. Like the idea, we know that Worf was a Klingon in Starfleet. To see a Klingon go through Starfleet Academy would have been something really interesting. But 1,000 years in the future, a Klingon going to Starfleet would be par for the course. And then you're going to be like, okay, we're going to have a Klingon. First, let's make him a refugee because, let's click the boxes here. We're going to make him a refugee, and we're going to have, his co-parenting issues and all these things. Then we're going to blow up Kronos and whatever, and then we're going to make him gay, and we're going to do all of these things that are all coded for today, and make that a part of the show. No, I want to see what a Klingon character looks like when you go through Starfleet Academy. How does that look? I don't care about his interpersonal relationships. I don't care about his sexuality. I want to see a Klingon go through Starfleet Academy. That's what I think anybody would have wanted to see. But we don't get to see that. Nope, we got to make a Klingon without a country. We have to make the Klingon gay. We have to make him all of these things of today. And we're expected to like this character. It's like, no, we want to watch a Klingon go through Starfleet Academy. But these writers don't want to deliver that. They want to do something else. And so you get all caught up. The audience, you're asking the audience, you're promising showing a Klingon doing these things. It's okay to subvert audience expectations. But what does a Klingon sexuality have to do with his time at Starfleet Academy? The problem with this show is they didn't really want to do a show about Starfleet Academy. They just wanted to do a show about teenagers in the Star Trek universe. So they made Starfleet Academy something that it really isn't. They made it for a bunch of mediocre people. We can't make the elites go to Starfleet Academy. And let's do stupid shit like we're going to have the War College be the villains. I mean, everything about it was ridiculous. I mean, shit, man, you know what another Star Trek movie? Do you know what another Star Trek movie or a movie they should look at? The fucking Social Network. That could have been used as the basis for a Starfleet Academy series. Show me that. Show me that. Give me the equivalent of what would the Mark Zuckerberg making Face Smash at Starfleet Academy do? But no. Anyway, I could go off. You've heard it a million times. While every IP and pop culture franchise must deal with a loud segment of online haters and any new iteration, a franchise like Star Trek, which is built on progressive values, Star Trek is not built on progressive values. It's not built on that. Star Trek is built on the reality of human beings having straightened up our petty shit and moved out into the galaxy and joined a federation of all different kinds of aliens. So, is that progressive or is that reality? Is that what it is? It's classical liberalism meets common sense. What they're not doing is extrapolating what human civilization would look like 1,000 years from now. They're trying to make everything of today. That is an allegorical science fiction action adventure. That's you because it's all writers self-inserting. It's not them writing great stories first. They're all self-inserting. The whole show is Mary Sued Out. I mean, like we have student same-sex relationships and academic same-sex relationships. Why do our instructors, why do we have to know anything about their private lives? You know, it's such a weird thing. When I went to school, growing up, seeing a teacher out of school was such a weird thing. You know, if they were smart, they would have made a show about the professors were both the protagonists and the antagonists. You know, I mean, again, terrible. It's so weird. Roddenberry's inclusive, optimistic vision of the future. It was inclusive in the sense that that is the inevitable destination of where humankind should go. I think anyone who I said I was classically liberal up front, that's the reality. If we become a spacefaring race, every single human being becomes a human from Earth. We're not black, we're not white, we're not yellow, we're not brown, we're not straight, we're not gay, we're not bi. We're humans from Earth. And as Star Trek showed us, even as late as Enterprise, there are species that need 3 genders to procreate. And you know what was really interesting was that wasn't about the sexuality. It was about how one of those genders was marginalized. And you could use that on many different levels. It was way smarter. It's a second season second season Enterprise episode called Cogenitor. Watch that episode. If you've never watched Enterprise before, watch the second season Star Trek Enterprise episode, Cogenitor, and see what that episode leaves you with at the end. And you watch that episode and you'll be like, wow, well, isn't that more thought-provoking and interesting than all 10 episodes, all $100 million plus of the swill they served up as Starfleet Academy? Go back and watch that. Star Trek doesn't need me or anyone else to speak for it. It speaks for itself. The problem with the last 9 years of Star Trek is it's not good, even though people can like it. So, Star Trek, which is built on progressive values and Gene Roddenberry's inclusive, optimistic vision of the future, feels even more vulnerable. Will future Star Trek now be less daring and take fewer or no risks in order to play it safe? No. What it needs to do is it has to be well written by people that have read fucking books, that know how to tell stories, that haven't just watched TV shows, that don't just want to tell the stories of their own lives. I'm going to take my own life and put it into Star Trek. Write a goddamn story. Write an allegorical science fiction action adventure story. Do that. Star Trek on Paramount Plus's rapid expansion. You know what? Enough of this shit. I don't even want to talk about this anymore. You've heard me rant and rave about Star Trek. It was canceled. They gave us Section 31, and now they gave us Star Trek Starfleet Academy. They failed. They failed because they're bad writers, and they're bad showrunners, and they're bad television makers. Star Trek deserves better than these people. For 9 years, they have stolen from Star Trek novelists. They've stolen from other better writers like Ursula K. Le Guin. They've stolen from classic Star Trek. They have failed to create anything new and compelling that is going to be looked at and exalted as great science fiction television. They have failed. They were given something that was, hey, I want to make Harry Potter and X-Men in space. Really? Really? You don't even delve into the Starfleet Academy comics or the Starfleet Academy novels that were written. You don't watch Lower Decks. You don't watch Coming of Age. You don't watch The First Duty. You don't watch any of the Deep Space Nine episodes that dealt with Starfleet Academy. You failed because you didn't do the work. That's why you failed. You didn't do the work. Simple as that. I don't care anymore about modern Star Trek. These people continually failed. That's why they only made prequels. They couldn't come up with a good idea. Even Starfleet Academy was something that was floated since the 80s. Well, let's go back. Discovery is a prequel. Strange New Worlds is a prequel. Lower Decks was a show about people that watched Star Trek. I mean, talk about a lack of creativity. What a failure this is. And I'm glad it's gone. They deserve to fail. Anyway, you know who doesn't deserve to fail? The readers and viewers of this channel. And I have letters from them. Hey, somebody named A. Kurtzman sends in a tip. Hey, if that's really you, Alex, do better. He says, Alex Kurtzman says, whoa, Rob, is that a 3.75-inch action figure on your front pocket, or are you just happy to talk about me again? I've been running Star Trek for 20 years, and you say it's been a failure. Well, let's talk about failure. You tried being a director. You failed. How did I fail? I was a director. You tried making a Star Trek short. You quit. I didn't quit. You tried Jenny Craig. You failed. You tried being a YouTube game show contestant. You got fired. Though with all of that failure, I still think you've got amazing tits. Well, you see, that doesn't get to me. You know, personal insults and all that. I didn't fail being a director. I directed a movie. I've never tried to direct another movie. I directed 5 episodes of a TV show. I made lots of documentaries. I traveled around the world. I produced a horror film for Warner Brothers. You made a horror film for Universal and killed the dark universe. But it's okay. See, I don't care. All the things that I've done, I'm proud of. I didn't make a Star Trek show that failed. And you know what? I can criticize people's work. But I tried making a Star Trek short and quit. No, I did make a Star Trek short. You can watch it. Prelude to Axanar. We got sued by Paramount. I mean, I didn't direct that short. I was just called upon to edit it, which I did. And we won 2 Saturn Awards for the work we did on Star Trek The Next Generation. So there you go. So, hey, what can I tell you? And tits, I wish. I don't have tits. Not good enough ones. Anyway. But thanks for the tip. I appreciate the money that you paid. And let's see if I got, if anyone else has written in. Yes, people have. Let's see. I don't want to miss anybody. Warren 1765 said, who should take over from Star Trek? Ron Moore? No, why would you want Ron Moore to take over Star Trek? Ron Moore is making God of War. And I think it's probably going to be pretty great. I don't want to see Ron Moore go back to Star Trek. I want him to make original stuff. Outlander, Battlestar Galactica, For All Mankind. Now he's doing God of War. Give him that. That'd be fantastic. And I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. That's what you want, original stuff. Torn to Watch Studio. And by the way, back to this Alex Kurtzman guy. Do you think Section 31... And the thing is, you don't have to get mad at me for being angry. Look at the fact of the shows that you've made. You don't have to hear it from me. You stole Star Trek Discovery from Brian Fuller. You took his episodes and his plan and ruined it. I mean, yeah, the micellular network and the whole spore drive. Oops. Anyway, I'd love to have Alex Kurtzman come on the show and actually talk to him. And I've often said, anybody who wants to come and debate me or talk Star Trek, who's ever worked on modern Star Trek, is welcome to come on the show. I promise I don't bite. I've certainly done enough interviews. You can watch any Designing Hollywood episode or watch my recent interview with John Voight and Brian and Joe Mazzello, or watch any of the people that I've interviewed. Brian Fuller has been on this channel multiple times. I did 14 after shows about Star Trek Picard, which is something that Alex Kurtzman produced. I had a lot of the writing staff for that show come on this channel. And I was happy to promote it because I like that show. I like Star Trek Picard Season 3. So for anybody who gets mad that, oh, you hate all modern Star Trek, no, I've promoted the show that I liked on this channel. So I've done all of that too. And so, yeah, you can watch it. Torn to Watch Studio says, am I right in... hang on, I didn't... let me ask the question. Who should take over from Star Trek? I would like somebody new to take over Star Trek. So far, Bad Robot and Secret Hideout, they were opportunists. When Bad Robot took over Star Trek, and they took over... Paramount was at a transitional point, and they were able to take over like 2007. And when they took it over, they thought they were going to get a franchise and turn it into this big money-making thing. They wanted to get rid of classic Star Trek merchandise. They almost killed La La Land's release of the entire original series soundtracks on CD. But they didn't do that. They abandoned the Star Trek video game that was being made. That's a really interesting story. And they couldn't hack it. Those Star Trek movies were way too expensive, and they didn't make any money. And not the return on the investment. You have to understand, even though Star Trek Into Darkness made like $500 million, it was almost $300 million when it came to marketing. It didn't make its money back. It was not a profitable film. Neither was Star Trek 09. Not as much as they would have hoped, not compared to things like Transformers. That's what Paramount wanted from Star Trek. They wanted to turn it into a $1 billion franchise. And Star Trek Beyond, nope, that didn't work either. So I think if somebody's going to take over Star Trek, you need somebody new. I mean, frankly, I would love it if Chris McQuarrie made a Star Trek film. I don't think he would, but Paramount should use Chris McQuarrie and make Tom Cruise a captain. You know, I mean, there's another thing. Top Gun Maverick, in a way, Top Gun Maverick is kind of a Star Trek story. Go look into that. Go do that. 200 Watt Studio says, am I right in thinking you can't compare the ratings of Star Trek Starfleet Academy to TNG because TNG was made exclusively for a new first-run syndicated model? Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, hell, if you want to look at the way TV works now is entirely different than it used to be. Entirely different. But they do have, I mean, the metrics of what people watch and how people watch on streaming shows are definitely... See, the difference is back then, TV shows were paid for through advertising. If there were a lot of advertisers, then the TV shows were successful. I mean, that is that's just how it works. And nowadays, you don't have that. You don't have, when a show gets put on streaming, the only money that a show makes, unless you're talking about an ad tier that they're trying to add more and more of, is subscriptions. How many things get paid for? You know, how many subscriptions, how many people subscribe to the streaming service? And hopefully it either gains subscribers or the subscribers watch. The economics are totally different than TV is today. Totally different. Kenneth Colton's been a member for 39 months. Thanks, Kenny. Jason Fox the Great has been a member for 25 months. 200 Watt Studio says, elementary school had a field trip to a theater to watch Sounder and Fiddler on the Roof. I saw Starfleet Academy do a theater episode, and I realized it was elementary school. Yeah, I mean, are you kidding me? And our town? You know what? If you're going to do a theater episode of Star Trek that's set in the 32nd century, why not create your own play? Use that to create an in-universe version. Like, you know, 1,000 years, I mean, it's true that we still put on Shakespeare, but 1,000 years from now in the future, when you have a spacefaring race, and why would you put on our town? Why not create a play that's your own play, a play that exists within the Star Trek? Create a fictional playwright, whether it's a Vulcan playwright, you could go an Andorian playwright, a Klingon playwright. Why is it that you have to fall back on a modern play from the 20th century? Again, to me, that's a failure of imagination. But yeah, it was elementary school. 200 Watt Studio goes on to say, can sum up the current misunderstanding of Star Trek by the opening scene in Into Darkness with Kirk stealing a holy artifact from native aliens. Oh my God. I mean, talk about brain dead. The entire opening scene of Into Darkness. Spock in a volcano. We're gonna stop a volcanic eruption. And the Enterprise is going to be underwater so you can get a giant fish joke in there. Unbelievable. Yeah. DUI Champ says, R&B, I'm a ginormous fan of Strange New Worlds. I love spending hours with Pike and Benga and Ortegas. Maybe because I'm 46, I could not connect with the Starfleet Academy cast. I didn't respect them. I didn't believe that universe. I know. Well, that was the problem. They did not give you credible characters that you would believe. See, the thing is, to me, when you're working in a science fiction future, you need to create, first of all, the way they spoke with sort of modern vernacular. You have to have people that kind of speak in a neutral sense. You don't want to give them slang. I mean, I couldn't get past, why is Paul Giamatti making Sound of Music jokes? It's the 32nd century. The way he speaks and what he's trying to do. Why was there a heavy anyway? Why was the Athena going into harm's way with students? I mean, it was such a weirdly inconceived or wrongly conceived show. Just not great. Word balloon. John Suntress says, I yelled for 2 hours on my show. Kurtzman and company suck. Well, the thing is, what's interesting about it is, look, I think they're, especially Alex Kurtzman, we've seen him do his Man Who Fell to Earth remake. We've seen him do the Clarice show. The Clarice pilot was one of the worst pilots of all time. And what was even worse about Clarice, one of the things that I also think is uniquely unforgivable. If you think about Brian Fuller has said a million different times that what they tried to do was get the rights. They did not have the rights for Silence of the Lambs. They had the rights for Red Dragon, they had the rights for Hannibal, and they had the rights for Hannibal Rising. And that's what they could use to make the Hannibal TV series, which I think is one of the finest horror television shows of all time. Alex Kurtzman, who usurped control of Star Trek from Brian Fuller because Les Moonves did not understand how a Star Trek show is produced, they took Clarice. Like, if Alex Kurtzman was actually a good person, he would have said, you know what? I will let you make your 4th season of Hannibal using Clarice, and I'm going to be an executive producer. But they took Clarice, they took those rights and made one of the most god-awful, Jenny Lumet and Alex Kurtzman wrote that pilot. I mean, that pilot for Clarice was terribly written. I wanted to throw it across the room. I mean, that and the Buffy reboot pilot, New Sunnydale, they should both be relegated to the darkest pits of hell, but Clarice actually got made. Unbelievable. Jose Taco says, Drinker had Andy Weir on his show today. Great interview. He pitched a Star Trek show to Paramount and Kurtzman, but got turned down. Of course he did. Because Andy Weir, I didn't know that. I didn't know Andy Weir pitched a Star. Of course, because you have to understand, Alex Kurtzman has milked, he got as much money, and they got a shit ton of money out of Paramount and CBS. They got a lot of money. Why would you ever give that up? He locked up Star Trek, and he bled them dry for 9 years. And he made, think about it, he made Discovery, he made Strange New Worlds, he made Prodigy, he made Lower Decks, he made Section 31, he made Starfleet Academy. 7 different shows. And he probably sliced off, he made millions and millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. Why would he give it up? I mean, how could anyone in good conscience make Star Trek Section 31? That movie. The 2nd season of Discovery that delved into Section 31. How can anybody, as A. Kurtzman said, do you think that if I spent 6 months in a gym, couldn't look fucking great at my age? I could. You have to live with what you've made over the last 9 years and the way history will judge you. And to sit there and go, I'm a failed director. I tried to direct one movie. I directed one movie with my childhood idol. I've never made a movie that I failed at making. So, you can say that. I've worked on independently financed things. I got the Cody Banks movies produced, Hills Run Red, Tango Shalom, Blessed by the Pope. You've never made anything that was blessed by the Pope. I have. I got to go to Bulgaria and produce a film for Warner Brothers with Joel Silver. I don't know. But anyway, I'd love to see Andy Weir. But the thing is, he's not a showrunner, so you got to find a showrunner. B Thing says, I was just thinking. One, mostly like TNG is 1, 2. People came to like TNG while it was on the air. People have been consistently disappointed and disinterested in Kurtzman's Trek. It never turned a corner. It never did. Nick Howley, 2275, says, breaking news from Variety, new Lord of the Rings film is being penned by Stephen Colbert called Shadows of the Past. Well, you know what? Stephen Colbert has been writing for his own show for decades now. I've never heard of anyone that knows Tolkien's work more than Stephen Colbert, so it doesn't surprise me. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, huh? What? Anyone who knows anything about Stephen Colbert, the man is a walking Tolkien encyclopedia. So if that's truly breaking news, is that true, by the way? That's amazing. That's amazing. BCH2 says, in the meantime, Stephen Colbert will be co-writing a new Lord of the Rings movie. That'll be something. That's not a joke, by the way, says BH. So I guess this is true. No one knows Stephen Colbert. I'm telling you, nobody knows Tolkien more than him. It makes sense that he's writing a movie, and I'll bet it's fucking great, to be honest. So I'm in. Brendan Lucas says a reactor re-recorded her reaction to the Paradise Lost two-parter because she agreed with the plotters. Some comments complained, very interesting. Wonder how she's going to react when the N-word is dropped later. Are you talking about the Paradise Lost two-parter in Deep Space Nine? That two-parter? I would imagine that's what you're doing. Some comments complained, very interesting. I would love who did that. Why would she re-recorded her reaction to the Paradise Lost two-parter? I'm not all clear about what you're saying here, but now I want to look that up. John Suntress says, the word balloon says, the Klingons have two cocks. What the fuck and why? Do Klingon women have two hoo-has? They don't extrapolate where their cute ideas end up as dumb stuff. Look, I agree. Look, I don't think that anything that has happened in Kurtzman Trek is canonical at all. None of it's canonical because none of it was in the original series. They could have done a really look. I don't understand why people don't take, for the most part, if you're going to do a prequel show, if you're going to do Discovery and you're going to do Strange New Worlds, why not then take the original series and keep it as sacrosanct history and weave in your show into that? But they changed everything. You know, Star Trek Discovery in its original iteration did not have a spore drive. That was something that was created after Brian Fuller was usurped. It wasn't like that. The whole thing about the mushroom drive, the spore drive, that was all about terraforming in Brian Fuller's original idea and the original 13 stories that they had broken. That was what they were using to terraform new worlds. The mycellular network was a big deal. And it was done really, really well. And the tardigrade character was actually, they had a giant tardigrade who was part of the engineering crew. Ephraim was his name. And all of those things were taken and turned into ridiculousness. So, yeah. Michael Preston says, current Trek has not even one moment like DS9 where that is not afraid to leave the holodeck, or Kira realizes in Duet that not all Cardassians deserve death. No, the writing on these shows is infinitely more mature than the modern Star Trek that we've been getting. Why? Because writers today don't read. They don't read. You know, somebody on Twitter got mad at me because they said, do you think that you're better than me because you're a reader? Are you a better person? And the answer is yes. The act of reading books, what it does to you neurologically, the way you engage your brain by reading, is vitally important. And it doesn't count when you're listening to audiobooks. You're not doing the same things. I mean, when you're reading, the way your brain is organizing, that you're interacting with written language, the way you're using your imagination. To read is to increase your intelligence. It is to expand your brain power. So yes, if people read, they are better than you if you don't. Now, I'm sorry if you don't want to hear that. That's not a value judgment. It's just a fact. This is why I'm a common sensist. I would say to anybody, if you become a reader, and a lot of people, they're always telling me why they can't read. Well, I can't read because this, again, don't have an attention span. I'm like, then figure it out. That's not my problem. Read a book. I guarantee you there's probably great books out there that will change your life. But if you're not reading, and a lot of these writers, all they've ever done is watched movies and watched television. But if you're not reading, reading is the very basis of where storytelling begins. Sure, if you're into the oral tradition, great. But that's how great storytelling begins. You think Shakespeare wasn't a reader? Of course he was. So you've got to read. And if you're going to write anything, if you're going to write stories, I mean, now we have Chat fucking GPT that can come up with better Star Trek stories than any episode. That's what's funny. Starfleet Academy, They could have just had ChatGPT or Google or Gemini or Claude write it, and it would have been better than what we got. Michael Preston says, oh, I already read that. Yes, that is absolutely true. 200 Watt Studio says, I haven't seen Hail Mary, but it seems very Trek, very optimistic. It's very Star Trek. Andy Weir is a very Star Trek guy. That's why, of course, they wouldn't let Andy Weir in to make Star Trek for Alex Kurtzman because he would have outshined Alex Kurtzman. That's why Walter Mosley was kicked out. What they did to Walter Mosley, they talk about, well, we stand for progressive values. Really? Then why did you do that to Walter Mosley, the creator of Easy Rollins? And if you don't remember that story, which I covered years ago, read what they did when Walter Mosley was brought onto the staff of Star Trek. One of the great black writers of the 20th century. Read what they did to him. Fucking hypocrites. Brendan Lucas says, Ari Reactor, it was Jen Murray who was watching through Deep Space Nine. Yeah, it's that two-parter. A commentator complained. She said her reaction was problematic, and she re-recorded it as if it was her first. Oh, that's interesting. I like Jen Murray. Well, I wonder why a commentator complained about what. Yeah, because Homecoming and Paradise Lost are what is it? Homefront, Paradise Lost are those are difficult episodes that have difficult questions. You know how many changelings are on Earth? We did all of that. Brendan Lucas says, what's interesting about her reaction is that she reacted much like the Earth population, convinced, inactive, which ironically was the point of the episode. The episode underlined the fact how easy it is for Starfleet to seize control. Yes, and that's the Deep Space Nine arc from season 4 to season 7 has more to say about our world today than anything modern Star Trek has done. That was one of the really disappointing things about modern Star Trek. Modern Star Trek, I mean, here's the problem with a lot of what goes on nowadays with people. We have a whole young population that is convinced and has been convinced that the whole Western world is somehow terrible, that we're all like these oppressive, horrible people, when in fact the opposite is true. You know, the West has done more for humanity. Now, I'm not saying that things aren't bad. It's a continuum. The very best things are happening and the very worst things are happening all at the same time. But the Western world has done way more to advance humanity than any civilization in the last 2,000 years. And yet, is it perfect? No. But this idea that everyone is oppressed, I mean, we have... everybody's been convinced of all of this without even any understanding of history. It's amazing to me how many people don't know any history. I mean, the Middle East is a perfect example. It's wild to me, I guess, because I grew up inundated with learning all of the history of the Middle East, you know, all deep back in hundreds of years, and seeing, you know, how it has moved up and where we're at today. It's amazing. And so many people have been programmed to know they don't read. They look at TikTok now and they just accept that as fact. They don't even use Google. They don't even use ChatGPT to verify whatever they believe. It's wild. Well, that's interesting. I want to go back and see that, see what they're saying. See what Jen Murray's saying. Blocked by Rob says, Rob, you may have a small head Han Solo Kenner action figure. I don't anymore. In your front pocket, though you also have a 12-inch The Artist doll on your shelf. What do you think of Prince changing his name to The Artist? What's a quote-unquote pompous ass? Well, no, I think when Prince was fighting for the rights for his own catalog at that time, and he didn't have access to his own catalog. And by doing that, by changing his name to The Artist, he was making an artistic statement. I didn't think he was a pompous ass at all. I think Prince was fighting a long, protracted battle for the rights of all musicians. As a matter of fact, if you ever watch any of his appearances on talk shows or anything when he's talking about that battle, he was quite eloquent and quite understanding of the ins and outs of the recording industry. And you have to understand, when Prince was a teenager and produced his first records, when he did For You and Prince and Dirty Mind and Controversy, he was producing and playing all the instruments himself. The man was an incredible musician and artist, and he fought for artists' rights, musicians' rights through his entire career. And you know what? He did it was as much a performance as anything he did on stage. And I admired him for it. I thought it was a really interesting approach, and he did get those rights back. He eventually, in a way, won that battle. So there you go. Brendan Lucas goes on to say, I'm divided about those last few seasons of Deep Space Nine. Ira Stephen Bear suggested the Federation was so well off that it had become the monster the changelings accuse every solid of being. Well, look, I think that was kind of the point of what was going on in Deep Space Nine. You know, when you are confronted with an extinction level event as a utopian civilization, as a post-scarcity utopia, when you have to confront a galaxy-wide genocidal extinction level war, how do you maintain those values in the face of such an onslaught? And I think that's what Deep Space Nine did very, very well. And of course, you get to the episode in the pale moonlight, the whole thing is distilled into that episode and the choice that Sisko has to make. I can live with it. No, he can't. He'll never live with it. He will be haunted by that decision the rest of his life. And that was the point of that episode. And the whole thing about Deep Space Nine is, how do you retain those utopian ideals, those classical liberal ideals? How do you maintain those ideals in the face of such horror? And I think that Deep Space Nine did that very, very well. And it was an amazing thing. I mean, you know, people always said, well, that goes against Roddenberry's whole ethos. Well, you know, my friend Alvaro would tell you, no, Deep Space Nine was the show that proved Roddenberry was correct. That civilization, despite this horrible war, where probably billions of people did in fact die, that they were able to prevail, that Earth was able to prevail. And it talked about that show, you know, Paradise Lost and I think Homefront. It's Homefront. Is it Homefront, those two episodes? That two-parter was one of the great episodes the two-parter is one of the great episodes, those two episodes of Deep Space Nine. I mean, Deep Space Nine, sometimes when they look at, if you look at Past Tense, Part 1 and 2, dealing with the homeless problem in San Francisco, that was done in the mid-90s. And, you know, it took place in 2024. It was set in the year, and we were not very far away from that in real life. Look at how amazingly prescient that it was. And so that's what Star Trek could do. And you could do an allegorical show, an action adventure show where it was time travel, and what an interesting, I mean, Homefront and Paradise Lost and Past Tense 1 and 2 and in Purgatory's Shadow and By Inferno's Light, the two-parters that Deep Space Nine did are so far beyond anything that modern Star Trek did. It's a wonder. Like, you go back and you watch those and you're like, it clearly none of the, I mean, Kirsten Beyer wrote great Star Trek novels. I'll give her that. And they kept her on the staff. But it's amazing to me when you watch the level of writing that was in Deep Space Nine, especially, and you look at what was going on. And there are certain two-parters and there are certain episodes of Voyager 2. You look at the best of those shows and you're like, did the people that wrote any of Kurtzman's Star Trek, did they watch any of this? And clearly you have to think, no, because there's no indication that anything in those shows ever made it to modern Star Trek. And you wonder, why is that? How come? I don't know. Brendan Lucas says, well, fascinatingly, the Dominion never was going to genocide the Alpha Quadrant. They wanted to make peace with it. Did they? I don't know. Outlast it and finally enslave it. It was Ross and Sloan who had opened discussions about genocide. Well, yeah, I mean, sure, but you're dealing with the kind of war, like, what would that look like? You know, you can't, the solids were the Dominion's enemies. I mean, they flat out said their intentions. I mean, I'm not saying it's a Paul Atreides, you know, jihadist genocide where 90 when 61 billion people were murdered and 90 planets were sterilized and 40 religions were vanquished from the universe. Can't wait to see that in December. But that it was dealing with all of those things, and sometimes they didn't necessarily have to come out and say everything, but they did basically. You saw what you were dealing with, and of course, it was a little monstrous that we were going to do the same thing to the Borg. We had a weapon to take them all out, and we didn't. Picard didn't in Iborg when he could have, but he didn't. But it's all very interesting to look at now. But yeah. A Journey's End says, my 4-year-old daughter is a Trek fan in training, a big Spock fan, and I recently started reading her Star Trek novels to help her sleep. We're almost done with Star Trek Federation. Any other recommendations? Well, that's a great book to read. Your daughter, if you have not read her Star Trek Prime Directive by the same authors, Judith and Garfield Reeve Stevens, Prime Directive is a fucking banger. And that's what, if somebody said to me, Rob, you're going to get to direct a Star Trek. If I had the cast, if I had the Kelvin cast, I would totally make Star Trek Prime Directive. I'd make that movie. I talked to Bob Orsi about that. David C., who's been a member for 18 months, says, making Trek for a younger audience. As a 6, 7, and 8-year-old in the mid-'80s, I fell in love with Trek through TOS movies and watching TNG on Saturday nights when I was 8 with my mom and sister. I know. I found out I loved Star Trek when I was 5 years old. I started watching Star Trek. This idea of capturing a younger generation by making... When did we suddenly get the idea that kids had to watch kid shows? Like, when I was a kid, my favorite things in the world were Planet of the fucking Apes, Star Trek, Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Time Tunnel, Land of the Giants, and whatever movie, any Godzilla movie, any space movie that I would watch on Channel 11 at 2 o'clock on Sundays. Where's this idea that you have to make like kids want to watch just movies about kids or TV shows about kids? That's never been true of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Kids, I mean, that's when you get locked in on that stuff. When you're a kid, when you're a little kid. I would say the exact opposite is true. When I was a little kid, I didn't necessarily, I like to watch Our Gang shorts because I might as well have been watching Aliens from the 30s. But the idea that we have it's such a weird thing that I don't know when the Bart Simpsonization of kids happened. The whole Disney Channel, the idea that kids are the heroes of the story and they can get one over on the adults. That was never what I grew up with. Whether it was Partridge Family or whether it was Leave It to Beaver, the parents were always the wise one, and it was always the kids getting in trouble. It's such a weird thing. Brendan Lucas goes on to say, don't you think Kurtzman is the happiest dude on earth? Of course. Getting endless money for their producer friends and not ending up like his former co-writer Orsi, he must be stunned it lasted this long. Of course he is. They had such a good ride. Look, don't let them get you down. Alex Kurtzman's not coming on my channel talking about my man boobs and calling me a failed director. I would say I directed a movie. I didn't fail directing a movie. I directed a movie that I'm very proud of, that I won a Saturn Award for, that I won, by the way, an award from the Writers Guild of America. Best New Writer in 1998. So I don't worry about that. Alex Kurtzman is not coming here insulting me personally. He's sitting here spending his millions of dollars making sure he keeps that coiffed haircut and his stubble. I don't think that guy's had any real fun in his life, I hope he has. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Anyway, you know what I do have? I've got letters. I've got letters from viewers like you. Good letters. 200 Watt Studio says, we had an adult-level family movie every week on ABC and NBC movie nights. TV movies are so much more than now. I know. Look at the horror films we used to get. Made-for-TV horror movies. I agree, man. We had great... we were growing up because the world knew that people were smarter back then. They just made smarter stuff. They made a lot of dumb stuff, too. Warren 1765 says 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. George Mason. You mean James Mason. James Mason is Nemo. And where's that 4K? 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was made by Disney, and it's still, to this day, it was made in the mid-50s. It's one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. Top 10. Brendan Lucas says, it doesn't get me down about Kurtzman. I kind of admire him. I do too. You got to like somebody who takes that money. I'm going to go and read some letters. I have letters. This first one comes to us from Evan Newman. Evan Newman says, hi, Rob, I'm catching up on old shows, and I just started your February 2nd episode where you mentioned a possible event in Davenport, Iowa on April 2nd and 3rd. I haven't heard of this until now, so I'm guessing it may not be on, but if it is, I'd be interested in going. I live in the Minneapolis suburbs, so it wouldn't be too far of a drive. If it's not on, no worries, have a good or a better one. Okay. Yes, we moved. I really haven't talked about this. We are still doing a huge event at the Putnam Museum I think it's in Davenport, Iowa, at the Putnam Museum of Technology. It's going to be a 2-night event. It is moved to the last Thursday and Friday of May. Now, the first night, we are going to show The Maltese Falcon in their IMAX theater. And then afterwards, Max Allan Collins is going to come and discuss his sequel, The Return of the Maltese Falcon. So that is going to be the first night of the event, and he's going to tell us about maybe he's going to be writing more Sam Spade novels. The second night of the event that I'm really excited about, and for someone who called me a failed director, A. Kurtzman, we will be screening, it'll be great, in that theater, the first 4 episodes of True Noir, The Assassination of Anton Cermak, in that theater, in the IMAX theater. So we're going to have it in the theater so you can hear, I mean, I can't wait to hear what it's going to sound like on those speakers. But we're going to play those in the theater, and then we're going to have Max and I will be on stage, and hopefully we can bring some other people, maybe some cast members, more producers, to talk about the making of the series. So that's going to be a 2-night event at the Putnam Museum. I think it's I want to say 28th and 29th. I'm not sure, but it's the last Thursday and Friday of the month of May, right after Memorial Day weekend. So, and as far as being a failed director, I'm so proud of True Noir and the work, my particular work as the director, producer, and the editor of that show. And I am most proud that I was able to direct Max Allan Collins' wonderful, wonderful script. So, Evan, thanks for writing in about that. This next one comes from Paul Wosner. Paul Wosner writes in and says, let me just zoom in a bit. I know most articles are people's own thoughts, but I saw an article as I was reviewing my X feed this morning that I wanted to bring to the attention of the community since it covered a government program I naively, perhaps, never would have thought existed. In a recent interview with a UAP whistleblower, Matthew Brown, formerly of the State Department, he was discussing Immaculate Constellation, a government operation that includes an AI program that scours databases, archives, platforms, and military intelligence agencies, identifies UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, what we used to call UFOs, and unidentified submerged objects, imagery, and moves it somewhere else, as if it never existed on those platforms. To quote from the article, what Brown is describing is a system that doesn't simply classify information and restrict access to it. It removes evidence of anomalous phenomenon from the systems where it would normally reside. The shared servers, the intelligence streams, the platforms where analysts and archivists would encounter it, and routes it somewhere else entirely. The original location is scrubbed. The data still exists, but it exists only inside an architecture that was built to be invisible to everyone outside it. To anyone looking through normal channels, it was never there. This specific program only removes information on UAPs. But what if the government starts removing information about other subjects? I'm sure all can see that the ramifications of such a program are quite disturbing. Here is the link to the article if you'd like to read it on the show. History is a State Secret, Inquiry with Kelly Chase. In addition, here's a recent interview with Matthew Brown. Matthew Brown exposes how whistleblowers are being set up. And finally, I reposted the X post to you this morning so you could see the accompanying commentary. Well, I will for you guys, I'm going to put this, I've heard about this, these programs to scrub, they literally are scrubbing. I'm going to put this in the chat, by the way. I'm going to put these links in the chat. They literally have programs to scrub information about UAPs. Now, if that's the case, you have to stop and you have to think, well, why would they bother doing that if there's nothing to know? Here's the other article. I'm putting that in, and let me get the link to the YouTube interview. I mean, I am totally fascinated about all this. I mean, obviously, I'm a believer, and hang on a second. So there, I put those things in. I want to Paul Star Guy. I want to thank you for writing it about this. Look, I am a believer, and I believe that if we've been visited for a long time. And I'm the Graham Hancock stuff, Göbekli Tepe, and all the things, maybe Atlantis, and the things they find in the Sahara that when it would used to be green, and the LiDAR scans of the Mayan ruins in the Amazon rainforest. There's a lot to suggest that there was a technologically advanced civilization. There's all weird things in the Grand Canyon, weird things in the Arctic or in Antarctica. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy things, and I can understand why they wouldn't want people to know. And do I want to believe that Disclosure Day is the first part of actual disclosure? Sure. I would love to know that we are... Look, if To Serve Man comes true, and I can take one of the Canamit flights to their home world, and I'm just going to get, drugged and eaten, I'm all for it. And maybe that's why I don't get in shape, because I want to be food for the Canamits. I want to at least take a flight on a flying saucer before I die. I don't think that there's anything wrong with wanting to do that. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't know if people have been following, there have been some really interesting things. There's a high-ranking officer in the U.S. military that has disappeared, who was the head of one of the UAP projects. He just disappeared. And there have been scientists that are working on these things over the last couple of months that have been murdered. Look this up. It's not hard to find unless this program is scrubbing the information from the internet. It's very disturbing. And you ask yourself, well, why is that? I mean, I understand if this is all true, it could be one of the great stories in all of human history. We shall see. I don't know. Robert Romeo writes in. And hold on, let me zoom in a little bit here. Dear Mr. Burnett, as a longtime fan, writing only because you seem to genuinely enjoy receiving letters to read on Robservations, I do. And if you care to, please feel free to read this one. Just be aware it will address specific elements of the 1990s film Total Recall, although I will attempt to not reveal any more than I have to. Hopefully, this brief document will provide fuel for discussion between you and your supporters. Chekhov's gun must be fired, or maybe not. Total Recall should be discussed in screenwriting classes. The curriculum can still commence with Tootsie and Jaws and Chinatown, as it always does, but when the students are ready for a master class, a leather-bound tome of the Total Recall script should be pulled from the archives, placed on a lectern, and delicately perused with clean, dry hands, now that white linen gloves have fallen out of favor for handling priceless documents. Talk about, Sakai Khan. The story... that goes back. I love talking about that. Seki Khan. The story establishes an Earth of the distant future, including one very important technology, and a colony, socioeconomic rebellion, mutants, and an alien reactor all on Mars. It introduces these elements right out of the gate, then continues to layer on the references to them. So, by the time we're introduced to them in the narrative, we not only don't question them, we're dying to finally experience them. It's the alien reactor I'm going to focus on because it's Chekhov's gun. Make no mistake, it does go off. But I've always felt that it was Chekhov's pistol compared to the Chekhov's howitzer of an entire Martian civilization that we never see. Admit it. You watched Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull fully expecting aliens, or extra-dimensional beings if you prefer, to appear at the end. Imagine if the Men in Black series had all the alien weapons but not the aliens. That would feel weird, right? Well, I posit that's exactly what Total Recall offers. In fact, we don't even get a hologram or statue steel relief of a Martian. Instead, we're tossed the mere table scraps of a lone imprint of a Martian hand. Even 1979's Alien gave us the space jockey. There are many good reasons for their absence. The film inundates us with strange new worlds, beings, and technologies, so the presence of aliens could have well been a bridge too far. And if they'd been saved for a logical introduction late in the third act, they probably would have distracted from a narrative racing toward its conclusion, and possibly even risked becoming a deus ex machina in the hands of lesser writers. But let's examine one possible counterfactual to see if aliens were necessary at all. What if the reactor had simply been built by humans? What if an early group of terrestrial colonists discovered ice and built the reactor, then the evil corporation swept in before it could be activated to form both the very monopoly on air and guerrilla rebellion that already exists in the story? Humans built the entire colony after all, so it doesn't strain verisimilitude to believe they could have built the reactor as well. So, why aliens? I don't know, and I'm always hesitant to reduce complex topics down to a simple answer, but I would suspect the preponderance of the explanation for their inclusion is that aliens having existed in this reality is so damn cool, and with all the mind-blowing world building in this film, their cosmic specter might actually be a necessity to up the ante one final time before the denouement. Whether or not you subscribe to the implanted memory interpretation of the movie, our hero wanted an epic adventure, and shy of meeting an interstellar deity, what could be more epic than the implication of aliens? Actually meeting aliens, of course, but I already expounded on why that would probably be a poor idea. So steely-eyed missile men that they were, nice reference to The Right Stuff, or our space program from the 1950s and 60s, the writers threaded the needle perfectly, teasing the life form we never meet and leaving one gun eternally mounted on the wall. It's brilliant. Sincerely, Robert Romeo, Inner Demon Entertainment. Well, Robert, what a great letter. I love getting thoughtful letters about movies from 35 years ago. What's not to love? I've told this story before, but you know, when I first got to USC, I first got on campus, I went to the Doheny Library, and I didn't know that there was a cinema library as well, because I didn't go to orientation. I showed up the first time I was on the USC campus was my first day of school. But I went to the Doheny Library because it was this tall, stately building, and I'm like, what a badass library. So I went up, and I found out that there was a cinema library in Doheny, and I went up, and I was flipping through. They had a script library. And this was 1988. And at the time, Total Recall had yet to be made. And I found a copy of David Cronenberg's Total Recall script in the script library. And my first day at USC, between classes, I sat in the Doheny Library and I read that script. I read Cronenberg's script for Total Recall. And what was great about that script was he wanted to cast somebody like Richard Dreyfuss in the Arnold Schwarzenegger role. And when I was reading the script, when you finally get to the point when he goes to recall and it turns out, oh my God, he already has implanted memories. Like someone's fucked with his brain. That was one of those like Matrix, mind-blowing Matrix moments when you're like, what? You know, because you have no idea. In the original draft, he's this everyman, schleppy guy that, you know, has kind of a back or nowhere job. And to find out that he was actually a secret agent that had been sequestered away here was a mind-blowing thing. Now, in Verhoeven's movie, and I'm a huge Paul Verhoeven fan, it's different. Like you point out, the question is, did that really happen, or was it all just part of his memory? I mean, I want to believe it did. You know, I want to believe that it unfolds as it unfolds. And yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I think one of the problems when you're dealing with Mars, and it's funny because people have talked about how For All Mankind season 5 is like, oh, you're ripping off The Expanse, or you're ripping off Total Recall. But if you think about it, a lot of science fiction stories and Kim Stanley Robinson's monumental Mars trilogy, Red Mars, Green Mars, or Red Mars, Blue Mars, or Red Mars, Green Mars, and Blue Mars, if you read, or The Martians, if you read those books, there's a certain way that we would colonize Mars. So all of these Mars stories have certain things that are kind of similar to them. I don't think anyone's ripping off anyone else, because they're all extrapolating on what would happen if we did colonize Mars. And the problem with Mars, even if you look at Brian De Palma's Mission to Mars, or the old movie Mission Mars, if anyone's seen that with the weird Martian sphere, no one remembers that movie, but I wonder if that's on, does anybody know? There's a 70s movie, I think it's 70s, it might be late 60s, called Mission Mars. That movie scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. I haven't seen it since, but you go to Mars and you wind up with these things that happen, and the problem is Mars is a dead planet. I mean, we might find microbial life on it, but it's dead, which is one of the problems. So there can't be aliens, but the fact that there's an alien civilization, Brian De Palma's Mission to Mars did that. They seeded Earth, and of course, Total Recall and all that. But I like what you're saying. But it's interesting. I mean, I've always liked the idea of Chekhov's gun. You set it up early in the story, and then you have to pull it and use it. Always a good thing. But that's a great letter. So thank you for writing that in. And I'm a fan of Total Recall. I have it on 4K. I have that 4K box set. Drake Harris writes in and says, "Hello, Mr. Burnett. My name is Drake Harris, and I'm a young man from Cleveland, Georgia. I recently read that you were co-producer on Agent Cody Banks, both Agent Cody Banks 1 and 2. I'm a great fan of both of these films since I was a kid. First of all, I apologize for the second one. I love movies in general. You see, when I was 7 years old, I was diagnosed with OCD, and it has been rough for me. School was not easy for me either, because I also had learning disabilities and OCD made things worse. Actually, when I was 12, my OCD got so severe that a doctor told my parents that I would not be able to attend a public high school. Well, thankfully, I was able to attend a public high school, but there was another obstacle I had to face: graduating. There are many requirements to graduate, and I know my family and I was worried. More than anything, I wanted to walk across that stage and get my diploma. I remember hearing about stories when I was 10 of kids not being able to participate in their graduation because they failed one of the requirements. That stuck with me. Well, with a lot of hard work, pain, and tears, I was able to graduate with my parents and God's help. That was one of the best moments of my life. Right there when I graduated. The movies help me because I can escape into another world where I can be one of those characters on screen. And now I'm trying to pursue my dream of becoming a film director. Movies like Agent Cody Banks have been a real inspiration to me, and I wanted to ask what your advice would be." Well, Drake, first of all, I want to thank you very much for this kind letter. Thank you for writing in, and congratulations on absolutely achieving your dreams. And you did that on your own with help. So congratulations with that. Here's what I would tell you. There is nothing stopping you. There's people that want to, direct feature films. There is nothing stopping anybody from making a movie. We now carry around iPhones. You can get 2 iPhones and you can make a Hollywood quality production if you want to. The thing about movie making is it's a very multidisciplinary activity. First of all, you have to be a very social person. If you want to be a director, you have to be social. You have to be able to walk into a room and talk to everybody in that room. You also have to be a great communicator. You have to know how to tell people what you want, because everybody on a film set, if you're directing, wants to do what you want them to do. You have to have a vision, and you have to be able to convey it. So knowing how to communicate with people and talk to people is essential. Knowing how to write well is also essential, because you probably want to be an auteurist, which means you want to write the material that you want to direct. So learning how to write is essential, which also means you should learn to read. And then You have to learn a bunch of other disciplines. You have to learn how a camera works. You have to understand how lenses see. What is the difference between a wide-angle lens and what is the difference between a macro lens? What is the difference between 65 millimeter and what's the difference between 35 millimeter? What's the difference between a 50 millimeter lens and what's the difference between a 20 millimeter lens? You have to learn all of these different kinds of things. It's hugely multidisciplinary, and it's very, very exciting. And then also you have to learn how cinema works. You have to learn the art of editorial. You have to learn the art of cinema is an actual language. It's a whole second language you have to learn. And that language is how do you tell stories in pictures? Before you even make movies where anybody talks, they'll tell you in school, you can start right now. I've often said to this, I've told people in school this, you can start making a movie right now. And one of the things that I've suggested that people go do is make a movie about where you live and think of it as a video tone poem. Like even if you want to walk down to the end of your street or a street, wherever it is you live right now, make a documentary like a day in the life of your street. And go down, if you're working during the week, you can only do this on Saturdays. Go shoot on consecutive Saturdays. Take a month to do it. Shoot on 4 or 5 consecutive Saturdays and shoot everything that you see. Everything that you think is interesting that happens on your street or on your street corner. Shoot it, and practice. If you're going to use an iPhone, practice shots. Move around. And by the way, here's something that a lot of first-time filmmakers or people that just want to start making movies don't realize. Is remember, cinema is an art form where you can work on the X, Y, and the Z axes. So you can go this way, you can go this way, you can go this way, but you can go here, close up, or pull way back. And you can do all of those things and start playing with what you see in the frame. And just shoot a bunch of stuff in your own milieu, your own street corner, whatever. And then what you do is you get all this footage together. And then you start piecing it together. You start editing it together. And you will see how a tone poem, a story emerges of your street corner. And you have to figure out, well, what is it about your street corner that you saw? What did you learn when you went out and started to get all this footage? And when you put it together, because remember, making a movie presupposes other people other than you are going to watch it. So you always have to have in your mind that there is an audience that's going to watch this. Don't be one of those people going, well, I just make movies for myself. I just write my diary for myself. Fucking hate that shit. If you're going to tell a story for other people. Don't just do it for yourself. And if you want to make a film director, if you want to be a film director or any kind of a director, you are working for your audience. And what you want to do is you start out making abstract tone poem movies and play with the art of cinema. Play with close-ups, play with panning shots, play with all of that. And there are books to read too. There are books, rudimentary books, on directing. There's a camera book. It's got a blue cover. I forget what it's called. But read these books and learn the basics. Cinema is a language, just like any other language, whether it's English, French, Latin, Russian, whatever, Chinese, Cantonese, and Mandarin. Learn that language. Play with that language. Read Eisenstein's book on the 5 levels of montage, and read about film editing. Read Walter Murch's book In the Blink of an Eye. Learn the language of cinema, and then keep making movies. And another great exercise is write a film. Think about. If you've never seen My Dinner with Andre, write a film about 2 people having dinner together at a restaurant. Or it doesn't have to be at a restaurant. You can shoot it, put up a table and make your table look like a cafe. And tell me a story about a conversation. Write a story about just 2 people talking to each other. Figure out what is that story like. One person knows something the other person doesn't know, and this one person is reluctant to tell them. Maybe they had a friend who died. Maybe there's a piece of information that one friend has to tell this other friend but doesn't really want to tell him and is afraid what he's going to say. Or make it one guy's sitting down to break up with his girlfriend. Pick it up. Whatever it is. Make it one little thing. And then write that script. And then shoot it. That conversation. and figure out over the shoulders, figure out close-ups, figures out 50-50s, figure out master shots, all with that little conversation. And do these little exercises for yourself and build upon them. And that conversation then might become a short film. And a lot of people will tell you that that short films don't have any value. You need to do, if you want to become a writer, you have to learn to write. Well, to make a movie, you have to learn to make movies. You can't just, everybody thinks because they watch movies, they don't know how to make them. That doesn't ever work. And really, really delve into how movies are made. And nothing is stopping you. You can literally start tomorrow. People that want to make movies are making movies all the time. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you have OCD. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what your sexuality is. It doesn't matter what your religious beliefs are. Nothing is stopping you. And it's amazing that we now have these black mirrors that we carry around everywhere. Look, Shatner from Free Enterprise. We have the tools and the technology that we already have. You can even buy a lens package for your iPhone and change that around, and you can start making movies tomorrow. Nothing is stopping you. So that's what I would say to that. And I want to thank you for writing in. And yeah, Agent Cody Banks. People ask, how did I get involved in that movie? Well, I founded a entertainment company at the time. It was called Endless Entertainment with Danny Gold and a girl named Carrie David and myself. Carrie David was Nicole Kidman's assistant, and she was in London when Eyes Wide Shut was being made. And we founded a production company, and we bought the script. Well, we optioned the script of Agent Cody Banks, believe it or not, from a limo driver. And then we got my friends Zach and Ashley Edward Miller and Zach Stentz, to rewrite the original script, because the script wasn't, he was a first-time screenwriter. And Zach and Ashley had been cutting their teeth on television. Then they went on to write X-Men First Class. Bringing it up again, bringing it all around. It all comes around. And they also wrote Thor. They were the writers on Thor and X-Men First Class. And they rewrote the Agent Cody Banks script. And what we loved about it, and it was what they had written was great. It was a fantastic script. And the idea was it's Ferris Bueller meets James Bond. And it was a script that was written very much imagine a Back to the Future version of a Bond film. It was the kind of that kind of attitude. And then we sold it. I mean, there's a lot longer story, but we sold it to MGM in February. And then the movie went before the cameras in March. This was all in 2002. Insane. That was the first Cody Banks. Never happens that way. But the studio, in their wisdom, they decided not to make it Ferris Bueller meets James Bond. They wanted to make it for tweens. So instead of being for 16 to 24-year-olds, in MGM's wisdom, they decided to make it for 8 to 12-year-olds, which I thought was a huge mistake, but we'd already sold it to the studio, and they were going to make it, so it was a big epic win. And as many people know, there are many producers on Agent Cody Banks, but the only producer in the main credits that has a single card credit is me. Why? Because you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So if you watch Agent Cody Banks, the main titles come at the end of the movie. Madonna is a producer on Agent Cody Banks. Jason Alexander is a producer on Agent Cody Banks. I have stories. But when you see my name, it's emblazoned co-producer, Robert Meyer Burnett. I have the only single card producer credits in both Agent Cody Banks movies. Yay me. So I'll take my man boobs for 1,000, Alex. So yeah, that was great. And it was a lot of fun. And while I wish the movie was what Zach and Ashley originally wrote, because that would have been a $200 million franchise, the movie still made a little bit of money. So that was fun. But there you go. So Drake, thanks for writing in. I very much appreciate that those movies touched you, and in a way, and that they helped you. And I wish you luck on your filmmaking journey, and never let anyone tell you no. This next one comes in from our own Major Chai Chai. Ooh, this is going to be, I'm going to get into this. Here we go. Major Chai Chai says, hello, Robert. I saw Project Hail Mary last night in a packed theater. I sat next to a woman who read Project Hail Mary twice, listened to the audiobook, and built the Lego set. She proudly showed me pictures and a video of the build. To say the least, she was excited, and so was I. However, by the end of the movie, I no longer felt that way. I enjoyed the book, and I look forward to seeing its adaptation to the screen. I appreciated the acting, the creature and ship designs, the production values, and how well it was adapted. All the following day, I racked my brain trying to figure out why I didn't leave the movie with a smile on my face and the joy of having watched something really entertaining or special, like I did with Superman, F1, or Sinners last year. I think it might be one or a combination of two things, my state of mind, and two, any emotional momentum that I started feeling for the movie kept getting curtailed. One, I saw the movie on a Monday night. Mondays are always stressful to me, and perhaps I was too drained to really enjoy and emotionally connect with the movie. Two, in terms of emotional momentum, many times throughout Project Hail Mary, I would start to get engaged in the scenes that you call sciencing the shit, Grace examining the astrophage and being enveloped by the story, and then a joke would be made that didn't need to be made, or a joke went on for too long, i.e. Grace getting into the spacesuit for his first EVA, and I'm thrown out of the movie and I have to wait for the next science-y scene to get back in. Now I'm left with the decision. Do I try and see Project Hail Mary again this weekend, or wait until it's on streaming to see if the issue was my depressed mood or the movie itself? Have you found yourself in a similar situation with the movie? What do you recommend regarding seeing a movie a second time for its redemption? You're very perplexed. Major Chai Chai. Well, I have to tell you, I feel the same way. Lord and Miller are comedy guys. They come out of comedy. And there was a choice. Look, there's a lot of improv in that movie. And I think at the end, here's my problem with Project Hail Mary. And look, everyone I was talking about, I was all in on this winning Best Picture. I really expected Project Hail Mary to work the same way, especially the extended version of The Martian worked. I thought The Martian, written same by Drew Goddard, I thought The Martian was pretty perfect. And the extended version that adds more of the NASA team on Earth trying to rescue Mark Watney, that movie is a perfect balance of seriousness, of contemplative existentialism, of survival skills, of friendship. I think The Martian, the extended version of The Martian, is pretty much a perfect movie. I think it's one of Ridley Scott's best movies. I think Matt Damon is incredible in it. In fact, I think the whole cast is incredible in it. And it's also very funny. The problem with Project Hail Mary, for me, was I think exactly what you identified. I think Project Hail Mary was too funny. I think that they abandoned the mounting peril back on Earth. I don't know if they shot this or they didn't shoot it, but there was two scenes that John Campy and I were talking about that were left out of the film. One was they were detonating, they detonated nukes in the Arctic to hopefully start global warming so they could warm the planet as the sun dimmed. And there was a courtroom scene with Strat. And I think that going back and forth, they kind of abandoned Strat, that back and forth. And I also thought that Rocky was too much of a sidekick. He was too funny the whole time. Rocky was, I thought they glossed over a lot of the things, like the differences. Once Rocky was there, he was kind of like the funny sidekick. And I would rather have seen Rocky, even though very different from Grace, that they were kind of equals. I would have liked to have seen Rocky as an engineer. He probably was a better astronaut than Grace was, and suddenly Grace is just flying the ship like he's an old hand at it. I had heard the first cut of the movie was close to 3 hours long. I really hope that Project Hail Mary, they do an extended version of it on home video, like The Martian did, because I think the extended version of The Martian works beautifully. The same way, I think, not a lot of extended versions I think work perfectly, but The Martian is one of them that I think absolutely works perfectly, and I think the extended version of Almost Famous also works perfectly. And both of those movies add like 20 minutes. Maybe Martian's only like 10, but they're vital scenes and they add to the balance of the film. There is, in my mind, too much humor, and there's not enough awe and wonder. There's not enough science, and there's not enough peril. It all seemed pretty easy. And of course, when you get to the end of the film, they end on a really comedic beat rather than a beat that for me should have been full of wonder and awe. It becomes funny. And it should have had more of an impactful, by making the film so down to earth with all the humor. I think what you do is you undercut the wonder of the universe. And that's what I missed from Project M. I still liked it very much, but I think that's what you probably were feeling too, since you and I are birds of a feather. But hey, I love that people love it. This next one, let's see who this is from. By the way, if you want to send me letters, you can send them to me at rmburnett1701@gmail.com. It says it right there on the screen. And just put Robservations in the subject heading and what you want it to be, what you want to talk about. And I would assume that since you're sending me a letter that it's okay to read it on the show. This comes from Stephen Pape, I believe. Stephen Pape. Stephen Pape says, Hi, Rob. I've been an admirer of your work for some time now. You remind me of Tarantino in a way. Your knowledge of film and your long history within the industry and your enthusiasm for physical media just draws a comparison to me. I also worked in video stores for 8 years, like he did, from 1980 to 1988. Not to mention your involvement with film yourself. Side note, have you met Quentin Tarantino? I've met Quentin Tarantino twice. I met him at there was a screening at Raleigh Studios. There was a weekend of Dario Argento movies. And the first time, and Dario Argento was there, and we went and saw every movie. And he came, and he didn't have a ticket to see Deep Red, Profondo Rosso. So I gave him my ticket to see Deep Red. At least that's how I remember it. I gave him my ticket to see Deep Red, I think, and I didn't see it. But I think he went in. But the second time I met Quentin Tarantino was in 1998 at the Hawaii International Film Festival, and he came to see the one movie I did, by the way, direct, A. Kurtzman. Free Enterprise was playing at that festival, and he came and sat right in front of me. And, of course, this is Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and Jackie Brown had already come out. And he was already Quentin Tarantino, and he's sitting in front of me. And I was like nervous as hell. And afterwards, there was this big party at this it was a giant treehouse, this residential treehouse. And they had a party there, and he cornered me at the party. And he's like, man, that was some funny shit, man. And he knew all of Shatner's dialogue. And he was giving me rapid fire questions about how the movie was made and what was it like to work with him. He thought it was the most amazing thing ever. And I'm sitting there talking to Quentin Tarantino. He's just telling me how awesome I was and reciting lines that I'd written for William Shatner. It was amazing. It was amazing. And he was incredibly encouraging. Incredibly encouraging. He was very nice. And we talked for a long time. And that was the only time I had ever met Quentin Tarantino. So Stephen goes on and says, I know you're all for the cinematic experience in a packed theater, and I have to say, I have up until this point mainly tried to enjoy the big screen in as quiet as possible screen I can find, which is kind of backwards, I know, but it's just the way I am. Sunday mornings being my favorite time to catch a movie. Hearing people rustle sweet wrappers and chew loudly on popcorn, nachos, or whatever else they serve in cinemas these days has caused me no end of fury. I can understand that. You know what it was like when I would watch TV with my dad and he would eat something and go like this? That would drive me fucking crazy. That is not an ASMR sound I like to hear. I hate that. Today, I walked into a packed IMAX showing of Project Hail Mary, which, believe it or not, surprised me, as I personally wasn't sure if this movie was going to be a hit or not. Anyway, things got worse as my carefully selected central cinema seat had also been occupied. I quickly realized I didn't mind my seat was stolen when I saw the lovely young lady and her daughter had made themselves comfortable. I was contemplating moving a row behind, but I decided not to. Honestly, in my selfish and ignorant mind, I thought my experience might have been in trouble with the thought of a restless child potentially talking and wriggling and snacking and slurping during the showing. I guess my conceptions were a bit like that of a douche, if I'm being honest. So I was watching the movie, and I sat next to the little girl and her mom, and they were lovely, offering me sweets and having a little chat here and there when something happened during the film, and they added so much enjoyment to what was already a great movie. Seeing the little girl sat next to me, she was totally enthralled, and reacting emotionally to certain scenes took me back to when movies became a huge part of my life at a similar age. That little girl was so well behaved, bless her, and she followed the story all the way through and picked up a few clever observations that even I didn't notice. I had a little chat with them both at the end, and I told her how much enjoyment she'd added to the experience, and her mom was lovely, and it was so nice to see a mom and her daughter enjoy an experience like that together on Mother's Day. The little girl told me she loves space and has a space solar system in her bedroom and has been somewhere recently all about space. Bless her. She told me she was 10. Her mom was so thankful for letting her have the seat and gave me a box of toffee sweets on top of the Lindt Linder chocolates she already gave me during the film. Honestly, I couldn't have had a better time. Bless the pair of them. I told the little girl to keep watching space movies. My experience of this movie was always going to be great because the movie's fantastic, but they made it special. A moment I'll never forget, and a lesson to not walk around with a stick up my ass. Kind regards, Stephen Pape. Well, Stephen, you're an imagination connoisseur, and that woman and her mother, that little girl, the woman, the mother, and the little girl are also imagination connoisseurs. And you know what, man? You've proven a point. I mean, for the most part, are there a lot of assholes in movie theaters today? Yes. Unfortunately, because of our social media world, people have no attention spans, and they don't read books either. So they talk. They're not used to looking outward. They're used to constantly engaging, and people don't think about other people around them. Like, I've never understood that. Like, if you go to a concert or you go into a public venue, you're now a part of something. It's no longer about you. It should be about the performers that you've gone to see, and also to make sure that you don't interfere with anyone else's enjoyment of the experience of seeing the performers that you've gone to see. It never ceases to amaze me when I see people that don't take those people into consideration. It's really weird. But you also prove to me how it can be. It will never cease to amaze me to find a parent and their child and watch a truly engaged child. And look, I think you already know if you meet a mother and a daughter, or a father and a son, or a mother and a son, or a father and a daughter, and they are together going to see a movie, more times than not, you can expect that they've done this before and they've come to the movie together because it's something they wanted to do together. So there's going to be an excitement, and it usually could be a great experience. And I've found more often than not that I've had many experiences, because I go to lots of movies by myself, and I've found lots of those experiences like you described, and it always makes it better. And to have a chat, like you said, afterwards, and to see a kid's enthusiasm, it never gets old. You know, a long time ago when School of Rock opened, I was married at the time, and I said to my wife, I'm like, we have to go see the first matinee of School of Rock. And I'd already seen it. She's like, why? I said, I want to see that movie with a packed house of kids. And she thought I was insane. I'm like, no. And they're all going to be with their parents, and we got to go. And we did. And it was one of the most, did kids... They were with the movie. Nobody was having other conversations. They were totally into the film. And it was just one of the great movie-going experiences I ever had, watching these kids. By the time the end song, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll or whatever. By the time you get to the end of that movie, these kids it was incredible. You could feel the electricity. And I think every one of those kids went home that day and told their parents, or they started playing an instrument, I swear to God. So it was a tremendous experience. So there you go. What a great letter to end on. I want to thank you for writing in. And let's see what else, if anybody. Let's go back. Blah, blah, blah. Dee's Webbos has been a member for 41 months. I love your name. I've always loved that name. I love saying it aloud. Jurassic Joey says, Rob, where are our Fantasia 20,000 Leagues and Mary Poppins 4K discs? Dude, I honestly, Disney used to be one of the great home video companies. And since they took over Fox, and I mean, I understand they want to put everything on. I don't even know if there's, I watched 20,000 Leagues recently on Disney Channel, and it's not a 4K restoration. And that's one of the most beautiful looking films. It blows my mind that there is no 4K Fantasia, especially with the new Atmos mix. All three of those movies, Mary Poppins and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Fantasia, are three of the greatest achievements of Walt Disney Studios in the history of the studio. I mean, certainly Walt's crowning achievement's probably Mary Poppins, but 20,000 Leagues is right up there. 20,000 Leagues is still one of the great top 10 science fiction movies ever made, I think. And I don't know. I have no idea why. You know, it's funny. I just got shipped from the UK. I got the new Ben-Hur fork. I don't have it yet. It's en route, but I waited because I didn't buy Ben-Hur when it first came out last month. I waited to get this new version from the UK, just a box set with all the swag in it. And if you look at the transfer of that disc, it's insane. I mean, and I watched Ben-Hur 2 New Year's Eves ago with the Rents with Elizabeth's parents, and we had a great time. But I was thinking when I was watching it, I'm like, man, they really need to do a remaster of this movie, because I've seen the movie. I've seen Ben-Hur in 70mm. And I'm like, this has got to, that new transfer is insane. You know, everybody, George Feltenstein, the people at Warner Brothers, it's crazy to me that Disney there's not an effort that we don't have beautiful versions. I mean, look, they did Tron. They did a 4K of Tron. That's a beautiful, I mean, there was a 70 print of Tron. It looks beautiful. But 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I mean, the Laserdisc, the big white Laserdisc box set, they made one of those for Tron. They made one for 20,000 Leagues. They made one for Mary Poppins. I think there was one for Fantasia. I worked the very first movie, the first special feature that I ever made that wasn't something I worked on was I did a piece for the DVD Fantasia box set. That was the first thing I did at Curdy Pellerin before we did Lord of the Rings. I did a piece on Herman Schulteis and the physical effects, the physical visual effects of Fantasia, and how there was all these things, these mechanical devices that were built and animated over. And that I love that. You can't even see that. They redid it, you know, because all of our stuff was standard def. They redid it, and you can't even get that piece anymore. But if you buy the Fantasia anthology with Fantasia and Fantasia 2000, if you have that original DVD, you can see the piece I did on Herman Schulteis. I don't know. It is mind blowing to me that you can't get that on 4K. I don't understand it. And Fantasia is the kind of thing where, you know, Mr. Stokowski, you can put that on and listen to the music in Dolby Atmos. I mean, that would be amazing. So I don't know. I do not know. Our friend 1001, Johnny's here and says, Rob, good morning. For it's past 1 a.m. in Illinois. I've returned home with my brothers, and the three of us have brought our parents and little sister back from the airport. They, my parents and sister, have returned from Thailand. We are all very happy. Wow, how long were you guys in Thailand for? So now you're in Chicago, you're in Illinois. Well, you should come to our, if you're back in the States, you should come to our event in Davenport. It's like, isn't that like 3 hours from Chicago, I think? And come down to the event. That'd be great. That'd be amazing. So that's going to happen the last Thursday and Friday of May. Come on down. B Things sends in a super chat and says, what is your experience process when crafting creative works, Rob? Do you find overlaps and differences from one medium to another? Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, totally. So right now I've started, I'm doing a little bit of a re-edit on a feature film, but it was like, so for when I was doing True Noir, True Noir was really interesting because it was very multidisciplinary. So, the process of doing True Noir was really interesting because I had to get the scripts from Max Allan Collins, and he wrote 10 episodes, so I took months to get the scripts. And I would get the scripts in, and I would read them, and I would think to myself, okay, once we had the scripts, then we had to start casting. And then I work with my producer, Christine Sheeks, who also cast it, and then we would spend all day deciding, well, who do we want to go out for? Who do we want to get these parts? And so that's a totally different job. You're contemplating voices and who's going to play a role, and then of course once it's all cast, then I start working with my sound editor. I work with this guy Mike McDonald at a place called Private Island, and there were interesting things that we had to do. So I had said to Mike, the whole thing about True Noir was that I was like, okay, what I want to do is why can't we make an audio drama sound like a movie? Why can't we take the post-production process of a motion picture and apply it to an audio drama? The problem with that is that there's nothing to see with an audio drama. You're not on location. So what we had to do is we built what I called the digital back lot. So I would confer with Mike, and I'm like, okay, so for instance, we're at a racetrack in Miami. There's a scene at a racetrack in Miami. You have to get, what does a racetrack sound like? You have the horse races, and then you have the dun 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 dun, and the first race. You have to have that announcer. Then there's a fist fight in a bathroom. So you have to in the bathroom. This is a real place. So I wanted to know, did they have individual urinals, or was it one of those troughs? And was it Miami? Did they put ice in those urinals back in 1933? So we had to figure out all the different environments, and there were lobbies of buildings. So you had marble floors. And we had to literally build all these environments. So Mike was doing that. Mike and his Foley team, they were building all the sounds for all the different environments. Then what I had to do was direct the actors. And when you're sitting in a room with, actors were always acting with other actors. So I'm directing actors. And then you're in you're thinking about these characters, and how would these people sound? And you can hear it all in True Noir. I mean, I had actors that were Emmy and Academy Award nominees, and then I had other people that were TV, people like Katie Sackhoff, and I was directing incredible actors, Barry Bostwick, from Rocky Horror Picture Show, Spin City. I was directing these incredible actors, and everybody's different, and so I had to imagine what these people were anyway. And then you go to all the different disciplines. And then with the scripts, I had to read the entire script. I read all the parts and then it was a scratch track to give to the designers to design the whole, before I even had the actors edited and their performances edited, then they did a rough sound design edit of the whole show. So then I'm thinking about, well, how is this going to sound? And then I was editing the performances, and then you take the performances and drop them in to the environments. And anyway, it was a very involved process. And every step of the way was a different discipline. And so, there's all of it, it's basically a matter of taste. You're still always telling the story. I would always go back to Max's script and be like, okay, what does this sound like? What do these people talk like? And it was really fun. Like, I'd never done anything like that before. And it was a lot of work, but I had conceived of how I wanted it to go, and we implemented it. And during that, thinking about the sound design is a very different discipline than directing actors. And once you have the performances you want, then I had to take actors that never were in a room together. They had acted with another actor, so I got performances out of them. But then I had to take two actors' voices and make it sound like they were sitting at a dinner table together having a conversation. And you have to figure out, how long before one person, and sometimes people cut each other off in conversations. You have to do all of that. And you can listen to True Noir. And, again, going back to A. Kurtzman, am I a failed director? And, I set out to do that, and it turned out pretty great. It's been getting great reviews, and it has an incredible cast. And you can go to truenoir.co, and you can see all the cast. So I'll stand by it. I'll put True Noir up against any audio drama that's ever been made ever, because I grew up listening to them, And I was like, I had the best script to work with. I had some of the greatest actors to work with. I had a great sound design team to work with. I put these people together because I know it's good. And that's what I can say. And the proof's in the pudding. Now, it might not be your thing, but you can't deny that the work that was done on True Noir is pretty stellar work. And I'll stand by it. So, there you go. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah. Scott Bartholomew says you need to expand and do an interview podcast. Here's my problem with that. Every interview, I do an interview podcast. I've done over 100 episodes of Designing Hollywood. I've interviewed Dune cinematographer Greg Fraser. I've interviewed Jerry Bruckheimer. I've interviewed dozens of Academy Award-winning and Emmy Award-winning costume designers. I interviewed Kate Hawley, who just won an Oscar for Frankenstein. No one listens to them. I've done, even on this channel, having John Voight. I know people have political problems with John Voight and Brian, of course, and then Joe Mazzello. That was a huge coup for me. To talk to John Voight, I've been looking at John Voight my entire life. The guy's a Hollywood legend. He was delightful, but not many people were that interested. And in all of the interviews I've done with celebrities, they're always the least watched parts of my channel, which is the great frustration of my life. I could do a Joe Rogan show, but I just don't think anybody would be particularly interested. I wish they were. I've spent the last 20 years interviewing people for movies and television. And it's difficult because not a lot of people watch. The only people, unfortunately, that are interested in that stuff are the people that are really interested in movies and TV. But I would love to do an interview, Scott, with all kinds of people, sci-fi authors too. But I'd also like to interview people from all walks of life just because I'm interested. Brendan Lucas says, I follow you on X. Have you seen the surge of racism on YouTube? In a way that would never be allowed before, but thinking in a certified country in the ME is responsible for all this in the Middle East. But thinking that a certain country in the Middle East is responsible for all this hoo-ha, where even a glance would suggest otherwise. Oh, I agree. Look, I'm astonished. Up until the social media age, I thought America was on a pretty good path in terms of acceptance. We had same-sex marriage. No one really cared about it. LGBTQ rights. Racial issues were dying down in the United States. People were accepting of one another. I would have thought that people loved hip hop. The cultures were mixing quite nicely. And over the last 15 years, with the advent with social media being what it is, and what has happened, look, I think, to be honest, the United States has been taken apart by bad actors, both internally and externally, using social media to foment dissent. It has. The fact that half of our young people have been convinced America is a terrible place, or the entire Western world is a terrible place. The fact that, people hate... Look, I knew we had a problem on October 8th when people were marching all across America, or all across the world, really, condemning Israel. It's like I grew up with being immersed in Israeli history. I went to Sunday school for a young age and had a pretty rigorous Jewish education. I was bar mitzvahed. I learned Hebrew. I thought the Middle East, I was very interested in Middle East history. I have never seen, and another thing that I also find strange is that when I was growing up, there were two things that dominated movies and TV. Stories about the Holocaust, World War II, the Holocaust, and stories about Vietnam. And there was a lot of American pop culture starting in the 70s and going all through the 90s, really, about the effects of the Vietnam War and the Holocaust. All the way up to like Schindler's List. What went on in Europe, it wasn't just, what people forget, it wasn't just Jews that were killed in concentration camps. They killed just as many non-Jews, like 12 million people. totally, and all the different concentration camps and the 70 million people that died. I mean, this was not for debate. The Nazis they made their play, and they documented everything very, very well. There was no question that all this stuff happened because you could get the records. The Nazis meticulously, because they were proud of what they were doing. They thought what they were doing was correct. And so this was not, this was already, now, looking at what's gone on now because of what's happened in the Middle East, I mean, all of this stuff was very much designed. And you can't destroy America externally, so what do? You divide, you look, that video, Yuri Bezmetov, that famous video when he did that Canadian interview, how the Russians talked about, here's how you dismantled the United States. It's generational. You can do it in like 30 years. They've done that. I mean, it's been done. They've used social media to turn our young people against the very country that has given them the way of life that they love, and they hate it without even realizing the irony of what's going on. What has happened to worldwide Jewry, we Jews, what's happened to us since October 7th was designed. And they've done a beautiful job. I mean, I've dealt with anti-Semitism my whole life. People just hate Jews. I mean, I could tell you that. I've experienced it my entire life. I was kind of a stealth Jew. People like, you don't look Jewish. Yeah, whatever. So I heard lots of the most crazy anti-Semitic shit. People have just hated Jews all the time, but I've never seen what it's like now. It's open season on Jews. We've gotten back to the point where people are just, in a way, it's kind of more honest than it used to be, because I'm like, I'm glad. I get it. You want to kill us all. And that's the way it has been. There are 15 million Jews in the entire world. There's 2 billion Muslims. 500 million of those Muslims want to kill every Jew on earth and get rid of us. And they want to subjugate the whole world. And that's 25% of the Muslim population. I mean, that's how it's always been. It's just now the West, if you read Gad Saad, suicidal empathy and all that, it's crazy. We have been programmed into this, and it's worked quite well. So the hatred and the racism, I don't get it. Like I've said it, we were doing well. The world was doing well 20 years ago. I thought we were in a good place. I thought that the world was moving forward. People were understanding we had more in common than we had differences. And, I was also traveling a lot more. Like in the beginning of the 2000s, I was traveling around the world more. I was going places I'd never been. I went to Israel for the first time. I got to go to a lot of Europe. I've been to South Korea. I haven't been to Japan yet. My dream is to go to Japan. And I had a great time. I love traveling around the world, and I met so many great people. I wanted to travel more through Africa. My friend Frank, he went to Chile. He spent time in Namibia. He went a couple of times to Namibia. He went to Afghanistan to go skiing. Crazy fucker. But he did. And so I want to travel more. But over the last 15 years, it is insane. And we have powerful forces that are using algorithms and things to completely divide us. And because if you looked at a lot of social media, you'd think America is like the worst country in the world, which is crazy. I mean, it was Britain and the United States that stopped the slave trade. And now it's such a weird thing. You have people talking about, like, no one remembers from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. It's people don't realize that the first war the new America fought was against the Muslim Barbary pirates. And you hear that story that Christopher Hitchens tells, the late Christopher Hitchens, that our founding fathers are like, why are you attacking us? Why are you enslaving 1 million American and European citizens? And because you're infidels, because the Islamists, there were Islamists back then. They were the first people the new America went to war with. Nobody even remembers that, even though it's part of one of our great military songs. No one remembers about the shores of Tripoli. Which is such a weird thing. People don't know the history of America because why? They don't read. When you have a population of people that don't read, they get all their information from social media, and they don't check their sources, we're all fucked. And so they've used it to foment hate. And I think that what you've seen, there have been a lot of bad actors, and yes, it's all over YouTube. And the hatred directed toward me. has been, it's been unbelievable. And I think part of it is because, like I said, the pop culture, people were so inundated with pop culture about the Holocaust. That big Holocaust miniseries with James Woods and Meryl Streep that was, 78? Everybody watched that. Everybody watched Schindler's List. The 60s, the 70s, and the 80s were full of movies about the Holocaust. Nowadays, I hear people just casually toss off, yeah, Hitler was right. Look at what Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens say. I mean, you're like, they've gone off the deep end, and they're saying things that are absolutely crazy. And yet at the same time, we're allowing Mamdani to have the Muslim call to prayer being announced in Brooklyn. Whatever happened to separation of church and state, when you have, and nobody's looking into these things. It's so wild. It's wild. I don't know where it's going to go, but hopefully Elon Musk, I look at what Elon Musk is doing when he's talking about building his chip factory and putting in data centers in space. I'm like, that's where I want to go. I want to go in that direction. He might be an autistic crazy man, but you know what? He's building a future. And between his robots and between Tesla and the Boring Company, I mean, he's clearly mounting his effort to colonize the moon and colonize Mars. So I'd rather go there. But yeah, that was, but you're right. It's crazy. 200 Watt Studio says, can you talk about how the actors felt about doing True Noir? How did they take to the environment? Well, what was really interesting was my original conception for True Noir was I wanted to get all the actors to come in and act with each other. Because of Mac's script, there was no way to be able, you could never have one actor like on an animated movie or show go into a booth and do their part. They couldn't. I had to have a performance. So what I realized is that people like David Strathairn was in upstate New York, and Bill Sather was in New York, and Vincent Pastore was in New York, and Savario Guerrero was in New York, and Louis Lombardi was here, and Barry Bostwick was in Florida. C. Thomas Howell was in Orlando. Anthony LaPauli was actually doing Death of a Salesman in Sydney. So I realized I still needed an actor to act with all of my actors. First, they all loved the material. They all loved Max Allan Collins' script. Every single one of them talked about how great the script was. And so I brought in an actor friend of mine who's been in a lot of commercials, and I worked with him on this He-Man documentary once, about 13 years ago. This guy named Corey Landis, who's a great musician who just dropped a new album. And Corey Landis is a very talented guy, and I said, look, I need you to come in here, and I need you to act opposite all of my actors. So he would come in and do the scenes, whether it was, Jeffrey Combs, whether it was Don McManus, whether it was Bill Smitrovich, and he would act all the parts. So I was able to sit down and run the scenes and record them and direct them and make adjustments and here and there. And it was amazing. It was amazing to sit there and watch. And if they weren't in the room, if they were in a different city, we had a big screen and you could look at them on the screen and they could literally look at one another and act. And look, again, don't take my word for it. I believe that if you make something, you should put it out there and it should be judged on its own merits. I am totally content with knowing that I certainly did. I put my best foot forward with that audio drama and I busted my ass to make it the best thing I thought it could be. It's the first time in my life I got to make something from the bottom up, and I made the best thing that I can honestly say I could not have done better. Of all the things I've worked on in my life, that was absolutely the most satisfying. I got the best guy to write it. I got the best actors to perform it. I had one of the best sound designers in Hollywood to do it, and I got to make it exactly the way I wanted to make it. And I am so proud of those actors. And they loved doing it. And they loved doing it because they were acting against somebody. That's what they didn't, it's one thing to go into a room, and have one person. I've directed voiceover artists. Like I directed Don LaFontaine a lot. The Voice, he's passed away since, but when I worked for NBC in 2000, I did a lot of commercials and things with him, and that was fun. You didn't get to direct him, though. He'd come in and give you 3 reads and leave. So it was amazing. So I think they all had a really good time. Katie Sackhoff told me how great she cried in her performance, and we were like, I was almost weeping listening to her. It was amazing. Jurassic Joey says, that interview meant a lot to me. I lost my dad to cancer in 2020, and Jurassic Park and Anaconda meant a lot to me growing up. I admired the last half of the interview. That moment they had was genuine. Oh, I totally agree with you. It was amazing to sit there and to interview. I mean, I've been watching John Voight my whole life, and Joe Mazzello I thought that, I mean, for me, I've had such a great time in my career. Look, have I only directed one movie? Yes. Am I trying to direct more movies? Yes. But there's nothing in my life that I'm not proud of, and I've done so much. I've had so much fun. Whether I'm editing feature films, whether I did DVD special features, whether I was in New Zealand working on Lord of the Rings, or whether I was on Narnia, whether I was producing Hills Run Red in Bulgaria. I mean, you can come at me and you can throw personal insults all you want, but I'm like, it doesn't affect me because I've had a great time. Would I have liked to make more money and been more rich and famous? Sure. But as a science fiction fan growing up in Seattle and moving to LA, I have had so much fun in this business. Have I had a lot of heartbreak and a lot of disappointment? Am I always on the edge of financial ruin and on the precipice of oblivion? Yeah. Yeah, but I've done so much. I mean, I got to make a movie with my childhood idol and William Shatner. I got to work 3 different times, whether it was being a Star Trek consultant for Viacom licensing in the 90s and then working on the Star Trek Experience, cutting all the videos for the museum that used to be there. I mean, that was an amazing job. And then I got to go for 3 years and make Star Trek documentaries for the Next Generation and Enterprise Blu-rays. Crazy. I've had so much fun. And then going to Bulgaria to make Hills Run Red, the Cody Banks movies, all the little tiny movies no one's ever heard of that I edited, making Full Moon's Arcade. I've had a great time. And I've worked on a lot of great stuff. And there's a lot of stuff percolating, and which is great. So thank you. I'm glad you liked the interview, Jurassic Joey. Brendan Lucas says, I used to watch Sargon's podcast, Sargon of Akkad, but then one of the hosts opened his segment, argued that Islam wants to conquer the Middle East and has hidden the true antipathy for the okay, and that the okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, so I know what you're trying to say. I used to watch Sargon of Akkad's podcast, but then one of the hosts opened his segment and argued that Islam wants to conquer the Middle East and has hidden but the true antipathy for the Muslims, and that the Muslims' true foil is the Jews. I was stunned by what I heard. I think that's what you're trying to say. Yeah, I mean, look, for me, it's I look at it this way. I'm like, I am no fan of Islam. Now, I know lots of people that are Muslim that are delightful people. But if you look at the doctrine of Islam, and I'm talking about reading the Quran and you read the Hadiths, it's all right there. Now, it's just like Christianity. Do most Christians believe everything legalistically that's in the Bible? No, because they also are students of the modern age. And they've also, you have to assimilate. But the problem with Islam is there's no real moderate. You either believe in Islam, you believe in the Quran, or you don't. And there are multiple things going on all around the world, and you can watch what's happening. And the thing is, it's really interesting to me. It's not right to hate people. You should never hate an individual. And as I've always said, that thermodynamic miracle of life, every single human being is kind of a miracle that we exist at all. On a galactic scale, it's insane that we exist. Every single human being, even though there's like 8 billion people now. It's amazing in the grand scheme of things, any one of us even exists. So, like, I don't hate anybody. Oh, you know what? Hang on. Elizabeth is calling me. She sent me a notification. Let me just tell her. I don't know what she's going to say to me. I'll see what she has to say. I'll be like, I'm live on my show. Maybe she'll pick up the phone. Maybe she won't. She probably wants me to bring the dogs in. But anyway. Okay. She doesn't know. She never knows what I'm doing. But yeah, and you just you look at it's for me it's cultural and it's belief systems. I mean, one of the great things about America is we are the great melting pot. Anybody can still come to America and follow their dreams. But even America, like what's going on with, we literally have concentration camps. I read the story of a guy, he had a toothache. He was in an ICE detention facility. He had a toothache. He couldn't get the right medical care. And for those of you who don't know, if you have tooth issues, tooth problems, they can become very, very, very dangerous. Elizabeth's stepdad, Murray's brother, died when a tooth infection spread into the rest of his body. This guy, who was in ICE detention, he was 56, father of 2. He died because he had a toothache and couldn't get medical attention, and the infection spread into his body and killed him. He was not a criminal. And it's just insane. I mean, nobody wants unchecked immigration, but 75% of the people in ICE custody now are they're not criminals. They have no criminal record. They've never done anything wrong. Now, people will say, well, Rob, I mean, they came to this country illegally, and that's a crime. Yeah, it is. It is. But then you have to ask yourself, what do we stand for? What is our belief system? If somebody's never committed a crime and they want to come to America and they want to be a member of society, you know, my classical liberal and my nature and my common sense, my ideas of common sense also kick in. And, you know, I think that we need more of that. And we don't have a lot of that. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think that and now everybody's very open about they can hate other people with impunity. And it's so weird, all the things that you hear that are made up. Like, look, as a Jew, I wish the Jews ran the world because somebody send me a check. Can I get a check? Can I get some money from the lizard cabal that runs everything? I mean, can I have that? Please. Right now, I really only need about 195 grand. That's all I need to solve all my problems. Really. If I could get that, I can get you paid back in 3 months, 6 months, and at 15% interest. How about that? That's all I need. Can somebody kick it in? Because it really helped me out. If not, my life is heading off a cliff very quickly. But, hey, what are you going to do? So the hatred people have for everybody, I just don't get it. You know, I mean, I do get it, but it's incredibly frustrating. Okay. Brendan Lucas says, not Islam. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, you two corrects that word. Yeah, I just don't even know why we can't just say what we mean. But, yeah, it's a bizarre, it's so weird. I mean, I guess my whole attitude is I just like people. And I you know, are there a lot of people that are assholes? Yes, there are. But for the most part, my travels have shown me there's great people all over the place. And I've found that for the most part, getting to know people one-on-one and working with people and breaking bread with people and hanging out with people, it's great. I mean, going to Bulgaria, I was like, when we made Hills Run Red, I'm like, what's that going to be like? You know, going to a former Soviet satellite state it turns out there was like 5 languages spoken on the set. And all the people in Bulgaria were fucking great to work with. They had a great work ethic. Everybody knew what they were doing. Really great crews over there. Really nice people. They fucking party like rock stars. And it was great. I had an incredible experience going to a foreign country, making that horror movie. It was fantastic. Joshua Gonzalez says, I tell people all the time, I'm not a genius, I'm just well-read, and their face is always perplexed by that response. Yeah, I mean, it's so... I heard... My friend Alvaro told me something yesterday that I could not believe. Alvaro is a writer, very talented writer. He wrote his science fiction novel, Equimedian. He told me that he was dating a woman who was a therapist, and this therapist accused him. He was telling her that he reads like 3 books a week. And this therapist said, you have a problem. You're addicted to books. You are overstimulated. And we were laughing. I was telling me this last night. I'm like, what? How? What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's like, yes, you are overstimulated. And I'm like, look, a book is a container for ideas. And there, you can read fiction, you can read nonfiction, you can read art history, you can read real history, you can read filmmaking books, a book is a container for ideas. That's what it is. And I can't imagine, are you addicted to learning? I don't understand that at all. And it was so weird, but she was convinced. And I said to Alvaro, I said, she's convinced that she wants to therapize you. It was her way of trying to show you how smart she was. She wanted you to respond by saying, wow, you're so insightful and all that, even though what she was saying was poppycock and drivel. I mean, it really was. Yes, you're addicted to, it's so weird. 200 Watt Studio says, should I get the audiobook or CD set of True Noir? Well, there's only one thing of True Noir. So there is True Noir is an adaptation, to be clear, of this novel. We couldn't call it True Detective, but this is the first Nathan Heller novel, the first of 19 novels. There are 19 Nathan Heller books, and they go from the early 30s to the late 60s. And so there is an audio adaptation of True Noir. An audio book, like an audiobook. There's an audiobook of True Detective. True Noir is a full-blown audio drama. So it's got a music score. There's almost 4 hours of original music. It's literally like you're listening to a movie, even though there's a lot of narration and stuff. So anything that you get of True Noir is the same thing. You can get the digital download. The CD that we sell in America is an MP3, but they have the CD set that you get from Europe. I think it's a 4-disc set, is actually uncompressed. Right now, you can only get it in 2-channel audio, but the Blu-ray that I'm working on that we can finally release is actually 5.1, and that's the best. When you get the Blu-ray, all the donors who donated will get their Blu-rays. So that would be my ideal way to listen to it if you have a home theater system in 5.1, because it's fantastic. It's fantastic that way. B Thing says, I'm a bit tired of people being proudly simplistic, to be honest. I agree. Like, I find it fascinating that I used to think people were a lot smarter back in the day. They were much more well-read, and they had just a broader general interest. I mean, when I was a kid, you had to be. Like, I had a paper route, and I got a paper route. One of the reasons a paper route was one of my first jobs was I read the newspaper. I read the front page section. I loved the op-ed section because I learned so much from op-ed, and I was like 10. I read the op-ed section every day. The Sunday paper, I loved the Sunday paper. I loved the New York Times book review. I'm like, wow, these are awesome books. And I love the entertainment section. And, it's wild that I don't understand why nowadays people aren't, I never thought that I knew everything. I always thought that I knew some things, but everything was, and now we have at our fingertips, you have so much that you can just find out. I mean, I go down rabbit holes. If I'm not focused, I'll sit there and go down rabbit holes of certain subjects for, between reading articles and watching YouTube videos. Like, I went down a rabbit hole on quantum computing this afternoon, because of Paradise season 2. So, Brendan Lucas says there was a massive oil embargo in the 70s because of the strife in the Middle East. The U.S. decided to pursue a policy that if Israel was militarily superior, there would be no war. Well, yeah. I mean, the problem is everybody's tried to attack and destroy Israel. I mean, that's the real problem. And nobody wants to admit that the partition plan was to have an Arab state and an Israeli state. The Arabs don't want to coexist with Israel. They don't want to coexist with the Jews. That's just the reality of the situation. And that's what it comes right down to. And people forget, too, that back, Israel, it's like everyone moved there. All the Ashkenazi European Jews moved back. I mean, the Jews were cast out of their lands, and they were forced to go all over the place. And the diaspora is thousands of years old. And so if you're Jewish, from the time I was a little kid, next year in Jerusalem, every Jew, Israel was as locked to Judaism as anything else. I mean, it was such a weird, and the idea of Zionism was only the idea that we would come back to we would go live in the Jewish state, free. That was where we're supposed, that's the only place that Jews have, Judea, and it's so bizarre how, I don't mind Jews, I just hate Zionists. Like, you hate Zionists. It's so weird. People don't even know that, like, Jews were building in the early part of the 19th century, Jews were building Tel Aviv and Haifa. It's not like suddenly came and took over. A lot of that area also, the lower lowlands, were full of swamps, and there was malaria there, and people couldn't live there. Kids would die. And then the Jews came in, bought the land, bought it from the Ottomans or whatever in the late 1800s, and started literally draining swamps and building things. And they got rid of malaria that allowed for immigration of anybody who wanted to come into that land. There was barely anybody there. And everybody acts like there was this gigantic, like millions of people were displaced. People were all living, a bunch of people were living there. And then, you had the Peel Commission. The Ottomans lost. They fell apart. They lost. Then the British mandate took over. I mean, look at Jordan. The Arabs got Jordan. It's nobody even knows. I wish people would read the history of the land and not read both sides. I mean, it's a really interesting history. But when it comes right down to it, the Arabs hate the Jews. They want to kill all the Jews, and that's really the problem. Israel, they own the Sinai after they won the war in 1967. The Sinai Peninsula was much bigger than Israel is, and the Israelis owned that land. And if they were expansionists, why would they have given it back to Egypt? I mean, I wish people would know the history. It's frustrating, but yeah, I mean, it's not great. It's not great there. I wish war would end because Israel is a technologically advanced democracy, and eventually I think people would follow them because it's not like the Islamic world has tech hubs. I mean, look, Dubai gets hit by a few rockets and people are like, Dubai's over. Yeah, not unless Elon Musk puts in a chipbuilding factory there. Look, we should stop killing each other. Let's move into the future and start celebrating. But when you have totalitarian regimes that want to get rid of our freedoms, that want to get rid of our dogs, that want to get rid of our education systems, that want to subjugate women, it's a problem. It's a problem. Jedi Knight of the Tifa cult says Project Hail Mary will be my new happy movie, just to put on whenever I'm down, like 21 and 22 Jump Street. Lord and Miller are great. I want their solo version. I do too. I really want to see their solo version now. Brendan Lucas says, they were right. The Tuckers that advocate for the end of this policy seem to think that if you take away the weapons, Israel will go into the sea. Instead, you'll just get the thing that he says he wants to stop. Oh, well, that guy's on the payroll, man. I mean, it's so... What people don't realize is that the Israelis don't want to fight. They just want to be left alone. Tel Aviv is one of the great cities I've ever been to. The people in Israel are great. But, you go anywhere else in the Middle East, it ain't Israel. And Israel, I really don't think most people know how small Israel really is. They just want to be left alone. And not only that, Israel, they're the first people that would want to help everybody. Like, Israel would love to modernize the shit out of everybody. But they want to kill all the Jews and destroy Israel. That's the problem. They hate the Jews. That's always been the problem. My entire life, the problem has been that people just hate Jews. I've seen it myself here in Seattle, growing up in Seattle. People irrationally just hated the Jews. I never understood why. I mean, all Jews want to do is make cool shit. They want to build stuff and make technology and party and make cool stuff and save people's lives. Modernize medical technology, modernize agricultural technology, modernize medicine. I mean, that there's a reason why there's a preponderance of Jews that have won Nobel Prizes. But, B Thing says, off topics, I want more people to read Rumiko Takahashi's manga, especially Urusei Yatsura, or I can never pronounce this. It's Yurusei Yatsura, which I like, and Maison Ikoku. They're brilliant. They are brilliant. She's great. I agree. More people should read manga. That's the one thing that I loved seeing young people buying into manga because it's unique to them. They're enjoying it. It's fantastic. Laserbeam Hawkins has been a member for 24 months. You guys are great. Everybody, this stream's gone on for over 3 hours. I can't believe it. I'm going to bring this stream to an end, and I hope people still watch the channel after, talking about being Jewish and all that, because, I get it. Look, I'm a humanist. I want to see mankind flourish. I want to see all these awesome things happen for a bunch of people. We certainly have the technology. I hope we don't destroy ourselves, because we are worth saving. And we do have strength in our diversity. And but the thing is, you know what? You gotta want it. You gotta want our civilization to be great. You gotta want to put in the time, man. You know what? I feel that when it comes down to books, I'm surrounded by books and movies. I feel that today, in this day and age, when I have people pushing back, when I'm like, "Hey, you guys, you should read Dune," people think I'm an elitist. I'm an elitist because you should read the subject matter of the very song you're loving to chant. I just want people to do the work, and I feel that nobody wants to read because they think reading is a hard thing to do. It's so difficult to read. It isn't. It isn't difficult to read. It's so gratifying. At least when the movie comes out, people go back to the book, and Harry Potter led so many kids into reading, which is fantastic. It was great to see. I remember when a Harry Potter book would come out, kids would they'd stay up all night until the bookstore opened, and they'd be the first people to buy a Harry Potter book. I thought that was fucking great. Now they're re-releasing Project Hail Mary in this deluxe hardcover in November or something. I think that's great too for the Christmas season, right when the movie's going to come out on home video. It'll probably be out before then, but people are going to read that book. And Andy Weir's writing another book, and people are going to go discover The Martian. They're going to discover Artemis, and it's going to be great. And hopefully there'll be a new renaissance of reading. So, which is great. So anyway, everybody, I want to thank you for tuning in. This was a long show. You've heard me bitch and moan and complain a lot, but thanks for the questions. Thanks for the letters. If you want to send me more letters to Robservations, it is right there, Burnett1701, Burnett or rmburnett1701 at gmail.com. Please write me. Just put Robservations in the subject headline and whatever you want to talk about. The only reason I ask that is because then I can look through all my emails and I know which ones are for the show. And if I've forgotten, if I haven't read your letter yet, just re-forward it to me because I get so much stuff. Sometimes I miss things. But I want to thank you all for being here. I very much want to thank everybody who generously supports this channel via super chats and tips. I very much appreciate it. I'm going to try and do more shows. It's just been so crazy. And we have a lot to talk about. I'm really looking forward. I haven't seen Daredevil Born Again. I'll probably go watch that before I go to bed. And I'm really looking forward to, I can tell you this, I think Marvel with The Punisher, with Daredevil, with Spider-Man, Brand New Day, especially with Vision Quest, and I'm deliriously excited for all Marvel. And everybody, if you haven't caught up with For All Mankind, please do give it a chance. It is kind of a slow burn, but if you have some interest or knowledge of the American space program and the Soviet space program, I think you'll find it much more gratifying, and read up on it because it's really interesting. And go to the Apple website, because they have a lot of really great background videos on the history of the show, the fictitious history and the real history, and how they dovetail and don't dovetail. And there's a lot of extra stuff there that will augment your enjoyment of the show. And I will proselytize till the end of my days for Project Hail Mary, and For All Mankind. It's really great, and it's really gratifying. And yes, it gets soap opera-y, but you'll see the highs are very high, and it's a lot of fun. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, Have a better night. I will see you on the John Campea Show in the morning. And on Thursday, Az who you might know from Nerdrotic, Az Heel versus Babyface. He and I used to do a lot of streams on this channel. We reviewed the entire Prisoner, the Prisoner television series. We did a show about action figures. And we also did Squid Game reviews from the first Squid Game. So I haven't streamed with him for a long time. I'm going to do that Thursday morning. And we're going to do a little bit of a catch-up, so that'll be fun. And, of course, Let's Get Physical Media is coming. I've got a few boxes coming from Europe. I don't know if they'll make it here in time, but who knows? Something to show. I'm being surrounded by... I got to put these discs away. But I want to thank everybody. And I will see you all later. And go see Project Hail Mary, right, and tell me what you think about it. And on that note, have a better night.